Gandang umaga po sa lahat. Morning to everyone. This meeting is now called to order. Before we begin, let me direct the committee secretary to acknowledge our resource persons for this morning.
Good morning. We'd like to acknowledge our guests and resource persons for today's public hearing. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Congressman Jose Enrique Garcia III from Bataan, and from the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, Mr. Emmanuel Cortero. From the Department of Foreign Affairs, Yusef Jose Luis Montales. From the Department of National Defense, Yusef Ricardo David Jr. Assistant Secretary Jesus Ray Avila. Assistant Secretary Manuel Pelina Ramos. From the Philippine National Police, Police Superintendent Peter Rosano Donato, Deputy Director CSG. From the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and also Police Superintendent Eric Sandila, PNP. From the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Brigadier General Pio Dinoso. From the Department of Finance, Ms. Miriam Pasara. From the Government Arsenal, Major General Daniel Casabar. From the Banco Central ng Pilipinas, Ms. Veronica Bayanos and Ms. Siti Butokan. From the Bureau of Immigration, Attorney Henry Tupan. From the Arms Corporation of the Philippines Arms Corps, Ms. Gina Marie Angangco. Everyone has been acknowledged, sir.
Thank you, ComSec, and we're very fortunate here with us is Congressman Joet Garcia, who is the proponent of this bill. And let me just give a brief opening statement. Lately, the country has been plagued with several deficiencies, in particular with oil deficiency. The rise in prices actually due to our lack of sufficiency in energy. As we all know, 90% of our crude is being imported. So pag pumupunta ho tayo sa gas station at nagpapakarga po ng crudo, most likely 90% of that binabayaran natin ng mga bansa sa Middle East. So our country has been plagued with the problem of self-sufficiency for many, many years. And one of the problems that is also plaguing the country's self-sufficiency effort is also in the realm of defense and armaments. As I understand it right now, we are only about 70 to 80% sufficient in terms of supplying our own law enforcement agencies and defense agencies with armaments and bullets. A good 20 to 30% still comes from abroad. Ibig sabihin, nag-i-import pa ho tayo ng mga bala at ibang kagamitan. Even the most basic armaments such as pistols, rifles, are being imported from abroad. The problem comes, one day, pag sinabi ng ibang bansa, ayaw na namin kayong bentahan ng baril at bala, saan tayo kukuha? And as we all know, even in the past many, many decades, ever since, siguro bata pa ho kami ni Kong Joet, we always have our own internal conflicts and internal struggles that we need to address day in and day out. Meaning that we need to address these conflicts with the right amount of armaments and ammunitions to balance and to deliver stability to our country. This is not even discussing geopolitics. Wala pa tayong pinag-uusapan na geopolitics. This is only maintaining stability within the shores of the Philippine Republic. With that in mind, this is actually a very unique proposition. This proposition calls for the self-sufficiency agenda of our country in terms of defense, ammunition, and armaments. For the very first time in our history, this bill will now create a roadmap that eventually will create self-sufficiency in terms of armaments and ammunitions. If this bill will come to life and become successful, one day hindi na ho tayo mag-i-import ng bala, hindi na ho tayo mag-i-import ng simple na baril, hindi na ho tayo mag-i-import ng simple na rifle. In fact, it can even go beyond simple rifles and pistols, as we have andito po yung Arms Corps, who's a leader in terms of the defense industry. So that's why this bill is part of the self-sufficiency agenda of the country, and it's a very unique proposition, no? Dahil first time to in the Philippines, and I understand it, first time to in Southeast Asia, no? Although the idea is not first time. I think one of the most successful countries in terms of building a defense industry is no other than Israel, no? Kasi alam natin they're in perpetual conflict, you know, with their neighbors in the Middle East, no? So kaya in Israel, what they created is what I call the entire chain of manufacturing armaments from start to end. Nung naging self-sufficient na sila, nagbenta pa sila sa ibang bansa, no? I think we're one of the customers of Israel in terms of buying armaments and other defense equipment. The proposition is very good. The proposition is unique. However, in a democratic setup like ours, there'll be a lot of questions and there'll be a lot of tests, no? And we all know that this administration has embarked in a very different fiscal policy agenda, no? Starting with the tax reform program. My first knee-jerk observation in this bill is really two things. So, number one, the right-sizing agenda of this government. Kung nasusundan niyo po yung proposal ng DBM to right-size, ibig sabihin to scale down bureaucracy, to reduce red tape, to reduce inefficient government offices, that will also be an issue, you know, in relating to this bill. The other one, of course, as we all know, this administration is also embarking in a massive tax reform agenda. Fiscal incentives are being rationalized, collapsed, merged, and again, no, this bill will be under the test of that fiscal reform policy of this administration. So the hearing today really is to test this bill, no? To use the current situation and the current policies of the government and to test this bill, whether this bill will pass the current policies of this administration. But like I said, the concept is unique and the concept has its benefits to our country, but we have to find a good common ground as to how to move forward with the current policies as well as the self-sufficiency agenda of the country. So with that, I'd like to hear a few words from the proponent of this bill, Congressman Joet Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to everyone, to our distinguished guests. First, I would like to thank Senator Gatchalian, Chairperson of the Committee on Economic Affairs, the Committees on National Defense and Security, headed by Senator Onasan, and the Committee on Ways and Means, headed by Senator Angara, and the Committee on Finance, headed by Senator Legarda, for taking up in today's public hearing House Bill number 6525, entitled An Act Establishing a Special Defense Economic Zone inside the Government Arsenal Defense Industrial Estate located in Camp General Antonio Luna, Lamao, Municipality of Limay, Province of Bataan, creating for this purpose a Special Defense Economic Zone Authority and appropriating funds therefore. This progressive measure is a first for our country and in the Southeast Asian region, as our chairman mentioned. The establishment and creation of a special economic defense zone is a necessary undertaking, timely and earnest patriotic effort to synergize government and private enterprises, domestic and international, to have a globally competitive, centralized government-sanctioned arms industry that produces conventional weapons and equipment for domestic use and export. It will bolster our country's innate capability, competence, and proficiency in the field of arms research, development, and manufacturing. This bolsters the statutory mandate in Republic Act Number 7898, otherwise known as an act providing for the modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines and for other purposes to develop a self-reliant and credible strategic armed forces. As a result of this proposed measure, it will attract legitimate and productive foreign investments with the objectives of providing jobs, especially to those in rural areas, increasing productivity and individual income, and thereby improving the level and quality of living conditions of the people. Furthermore, this will highly strengthen and greatly fortify our economic and defense capability and viability with the international global market, and would elevate the country into a diverse and multi-investment hub. I'd also like to mention the effect that will create not only in Bataan but also in the whole country of having an economic zone solely for defense. Silicon Valley, which is now the center for all technological developments, started because of R&D, research and development, and innovation needs of the U.S. military. So nagsimula po yung Silicon Valley because of the defense needs in that country. And when they started it, Silicon Valley, as we see it now, is a leader in terms of providing technology, software, hardware in the whole world. So this is also something that we should look into. It's not only per se providing arms, development of arms for our country and for export, but also the development of complementing industries, most especially with that of technology. For these reasons, Mr. Chair, I hope that the Senate version of this bill would also gain the support it deserves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kong Joet. And for an orderly discussion, and we will try to finish hopefully before lunch. Pero meron tayong lunch, no? But we'll try to finish before lunch so that everyone can go back to their own offices. We'll start with the proponents of the bill, no? And I've talked to some members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines as well as the Department of National Defense. We'll start with the DND. We want to hear your comments and some history about the bill, and also an overall, maybe you can give us also, sir, an overall view on the defense industry in the Philippines. No?
Good morning, Your Honors, the Chairman and members of the committee, Congressman Garcia. We apologize for the Secretary of National Defense, who is with the President in his official visit to Korea. In behalf of the SND, the Secretary of National Defense, let me express the appreciation of the Department of National Defense for this opportunity to convey the views of the proposed Special Economics Defense Zone. The SPDAZ, or SPDES, is a measure that presents several opportunities in terms of national defense and security, trade, the economy, and the development of localized defense and security industries. However, we note that there are inherent dangers in such an endeavor which requires extensive government regulation. The proposed Special Economic Defense Zone intends to create a special economic zone that recognizes conditions peculiar to the development of an industry catering to the needs of the national security and the law enforcement sector. The Department of National Defense recognizes the inherent advantages of developing a local defense and security industry that cater to the requirements of the armed forces of the Philippines as well as the Philippine National Police. However, we note that this involves the research, development, productions, distribution of conventional weapons, and highly specialized equipment, and the unauthorized proliferations of such may affect the national security. Thus, such industry needs to be highly regulated and monitored by national government. The Department of National Defense wishes to convey its support in principle to the conversions of Camp General Antonio Luna into a special economic defense zone and the creations of an authority. The department notes the advantage and the benefits of such can potentially provide the AFP modernization program, the law enforcement sector, as well as the Philippine economy. Notably, the creations of the SPDZ and the authority can support the armed forces of the Philippines modernization program in a number of ways. First, it will provide the Department of National Defense and the armed forces with locally situated proponents and suppliers for its acquisition projects under the AFP modernization program that are competitive with international manufacturers of defense materials. Productions, technical support, and servicing can be sourced and provided by local firms for equipment procured from the locators, thereby potentially reducing the attendant cost. Second, the zone will provide a sustainable alternative stream of income to support the AFP modernization program. The zone, as an income-generating vehicle of the AFP modernization program, will provide a new source of funds without the DND and the AFP losing ownership of the property. This arrangement is beneficial to the Department of National Defense and the Armed Forces of the Philippines, considering the potential income of the zone over an extended period of time without corresponding loss of assets, as opposed to the short-term gains of income derived from the sales of real property. Lastly, we note the considerable secondary benefits of the zone, such as the creations of employment opportunities, sourcing of raw materials from local suppliers by the locators, and the development of areas surrounding the zone, and the opportunity for the proceeds spent by the national government in the armed forces of the Philippines modernization program can be reinvested in the national economy. Sir, we have some comments to be discussed later on, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to actively participate and provide our input in the creation of the zone and the authority in both houses of Congress. Hence, we bring the collective wisdom of the committee to pass the bill as soon as possible, sir, Your Honor. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Yusek. Yusek, you mentioned earlier that you have some comments. Can you kindly give us a brief synopsis of your comments?
Sir, Your Honor, this is in relation of Section 7. I thought this was already discussed. It recommends the compositions of the Board of Directors of the authority, which is as follows. The Secretary of National Defense shall be the ex officio chairman, that is, and the Director of Government Arsenal shall be the administrator. So it will be the chairman will not be the administrator. Rather, we hope that the Secretary of National Defense will be the chairman of the board, while the administrator may be designated in the person of the government arsenal administrator. The undersecretaries of the National Defense as vice chairman or National Defense, that in the absence of the vice chairman shall preside the meeting of the board of the authority. Members shall consist of, we are proposing 13 members of the board. 8 of them will be appointed by the Secretary of National Defense. That is our proposal, sir. And the 8 will be nominated by the Secretary for approval of the President, sir. As well as, sir, we want, with the indulgence of the committee, sir, we want a share, an increased share, but this can be discussed, sir, such as 3% of government of the national, particularly for the AFP modernization program. 0.5% for the province of Bataan, 0.5% for the municipality of Limay, and 1% for the authority. So these are some of the major proposals, major amendment or changes in the proposed bill, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Yusek. Yusek, you mentioned earlier the chairman will be the secretary,
Yes, sir.
and then what board position will be allocated to the administrator? Wala na.
The government arsenal will be the administrator, sir.
But he will not have any board position or position in the board.
Member, sir, the board,
Member
sir.
siya.
Member,
So
sir,
one
sir.
member siya.
Yes, sir.
Actually, that's in line with the global best practices for corporate governance. Even the Security Exchange Commission has been advocating a separate role for the chairman and also the CEO/administrator. In many private businesses right now, even SEC, I think SEC came out with a parang best practices, no? Ang sinasabi niya, ihiwalay nyo na yung chairman, ihiwalay nyo na yung CEO or administrator, so that there will be a check and balance between the policymakers and also the implementors. We've seen a lot of controversies surrounding dual roles being performed by chairman and administrators. Siguro ay prime example will be Subic, no? Alam naman natin nangyari. The second prime example will be ERC, Energy Regulatory Commission, wherein the administrator/CEO is given both the policy and the implementing role. So yung ginagawa mong polisiya, ikaw rin ang nag-implement. So walang check and balance, and that particular person becomes a very powerful person. So ako, I'm in agreement po with your proposal to separate it, no? In conceptually, we can do that. In terms po of the sharing, we can discuss that, no, and find a common ground on that. So that ang importante ho, para sa akin, one of the most important aspects of the sharing is the sustainability of this project, no? Dahil we have to make sure that the project, no, goes on for a very long time. Baka at one point in time huminto to, no, because of lack of funding and support. So I think that will be that can be ironed out. Of course, if importante ho dito is to really come up with some form of a preliminary strategy kung magkano ba ho talaga ang kakailanganin in order to sustain this for a very long time, no? So we will require that from the DND. No?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, the USEC for Finance and Material is already scouting some of the locators from various talks with other defense sectors of other countries. So we have a memorandum of understanding and agreement with other nations, countries, that may be involved in transfer of technologies that can be a prospective locators in this government arsenal. So we have been there have been a lot of discussions with by the secretaries and our undersecretaries on how can we they transfer technologies, because our modernization cannot stop from just buying, sir. So we find it as, I think that is an innovation that, supposing there are two pieces of projects, so one will be manufactured in the host countries, and the other will be manufactured in our country. So we need a platform for our, or some sort of a ground, training or a grounds in the government arsenal that they can produce, so that they can produce any item of defense material in our country. That is how we are now proceeding, sir. So it is not usually, for example, Indonesia. Usually their program is they build one submarine in Korea, but the next submarine will be built in Indonesia. That is how they proceed with their modernizations. So there is a transfer of technology in the process of the procurement. But we need in our country such a government arsenal that can have the grounds, the venue for that modernization program. And this is very timely, Your Honor, for a government arsenal, or a place for the transfer of technologies. So that's how we in the defense see the future of our acquisitions and of the defense material.
Thank you, Yusek. Well, I have a few more basic questions, no, but we want to hear the members of your hierarchy, as well as PNP, and then we will ask some basic questions so that the public will have a good view on where we are in terms of ammunition and armaments. The next is the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP. Sir, any comments?
Your Honors, good morning. I'm General Diñoso, the Deputy Chief of Staff, the Armed Forces of the Philippines for Logistics, J4, and I'm here to represent the Chief of Staff, General Galvez. Sir, as a Bureau of the Department of National Defense, we are in full support of the comments of the DND as regards the support of this bill. And also, we would like to emphasize the recommendation of the DND to increase the share of the armed forces, specifically its modernization, as to the proceeds or income of this proposed bill. We are aware of a law, the Special Economic Zones Act of RA 7916, and it stipulates there that LGUs are allocated 2% of the 5% tax generated from the gross income of locators. And this represents like 40% of the proceeds. But we are also aware of the RA 7227, or the BCDA law, the mother of all laws related to disposition of military camps. And it also says there that the share of the municipalities, cities of Makati, Pateros, and Taguig is 2.5% of the proceeds. And this is really insignificant compared to 40% that the LG of Bataan and Limay will get. And the AFP would like to express its delight that finally we will get another source for its modernization program, also based on the introduction and background there of Your Honors, Senator Gatchalian, Congressman Garcia. You mentioned that this bill, the real intent of this bill is for the protection of our country and the AFP's modernization, and eventually this will benefit the entire country and its people. So getting the chance and another opportunity to have fund sourcing for our modernization, we would like to support the recommendation of DND that the share of the AFP from incomes generated from this proposal be increased. And as regards sustainability, we all know that the AFP modernization also funds projects at government arsenal. So if the increase in the share will be approved, it will also promote, also assist or support sustainability of this program, sir. That's all, Your Honors.
Thank you, General. The next is government arsenal. Sir?
Sir, good morning, sir. The government arsenal is consisting of about 370 hectares, and it is of rolling terrain. As of now, we occupy the almost more or less 70 hectares out of the 370 for the manufacture of small arms ammunition, and for the industrialization and the manufacture or the creation of this special defense economic zone, we very much welcome this bill, and we believe that this will help and assist the modernization of the armed forces, and as well as the modernization of the manufacture of ammunitions and other munitions for the utilization of the armed forces of the Philippines. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you, General. And from the PNP? Sir?
Magandang umaga po. The Honorable Chair, the PNP would like to share its comments and recommendation. The PNP supports the passage of the HB number 6525 into law. Moreover, the PNP submits the following comments and recommendation. The PNP supports the proposed power of the SP-DESA under Section 6M to establish its own internal security forces within the Special Defense Economic Zone in coordination with the national government and the affected local government units, the municipality of Limay, and the province of Bataan. However, in view of the constitutional provision that the state shall maintain only one police force, the PNP recommends that the use of the term police should be avoided in the nomenclature of the contemplated SP-DES Internal Security Force. And under Section 14, the PNP supports the proposal to impose a 5% final tax on gross income earned upon business establishments operating within SP-DEZ. However, the PNP seeks the kind indulgence of the Senate to consider the increasing the proposed final tax percent, so that additional 3%, equivalent of that of the DND, 3% imposition may be shared with the PNP to support our 10-year modernization program. The sharing of the projected income to be earned out of the operation of the SPEDEZ in favor of the PNP finds reasonable support in the overall objective of establishing the Special Defense Economic Zone to serve as a stimulus in generating investments, not only in the defense and military industry, but also in law enforcement and other allied or support industries. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Sir, can you repeat yung allocation earlier? No?
May I read? Actually, meron po itong error. However, kung babasahin ko yung original text, however, the PNP seeks the kind indulgence of the Senate to consider the increase in the proposed final tax to 7%. Kasi originally 5% po
You
ito.
mean the 5% GIT? 5% GIE, gross income earned. So,
yes, sir.
taasan from 5% to 7%.
Actually, ito po yung pinag-usapan namin sa legal. 7% po ito, but then based on our discussion, we have to increase it to 3%, equivalent to that of the DND.
Understand it correct, yung current proposal po is 5% on GIE. Tapos yung 5% gagawing 7%, correct?
Yes po.
Gagawin 8%.
Pag 3% po na idagdag, magiging 8% po.
3% ay idadagdag. Okay. Sige po.
From 7 to 8.
Baka wala nang kitain po yung mga yung arm score. Sige po. We'll consider that po, sir. I have some basic questions now after hearing the government proponents. I have some basic questions, and this can be answered by anyone, but let me ask the DND. Sa ngayon po, no, very basic lang ho, no? Yung bala na binibili po ng ating armed forces, no? Saan po nanggagaling yun? No? For example, 100% po yung bala na requirement natin, ilang porsyento ho doon binibili locally or produced locally, ilang percent doon ang ini-import? Anyone from the DND family?
Sir, Your Honor, I cannot really say how many percent, but the AFP procures small arms ammunition only from the government arsenal. That means ammunition for our pistols, our rifles, but all other ammunition like for our howitzers, our mortars are sourced outside the country, sir.
All arms lang po. Let's in particular po yung rifles and pistols, no? Let's focus on that first because that is very basic eh. Wala pa ako nakikitang sundalo, police na walang pistol at rifle, no? I think that is a very basic component of defense and peace and order activity. So, yung bala ho, saan binibili ho yun, General?
Approximately, sir, around 40 million rounds come from the government arsenal.
That is produced.
That is produced
Okay.
in the government arsenal.
So, government arsenal produces bullets.
Yes, sir.
And how many of those bullets supply, in terms of percentage, the armed forces? In the requirement.
We are mandated to give the whole quantity to the armed forces of the Philippines.
Does that represent 100% of the requirements?
Yes, because the amount for the 40 million rounds is through the GEA. So binibigay po sa amin yan, and then we produce the ammunition equivalent to that for the armed forces of the Philippines.
So,
sir.
sa armed forces, so, walang ini-import na bala?
Mayroon po.
Ilan percent?
Kasi yun sir ang hindi
More or less
ko-
lang. Let's para for discussion purposes.
Siguro about 50% of that, yun ang binibili, more or less.
So 50% of our needs is imported. Correct? Tama po ba?
Around more or less 20 million rounds, sir,
20 million
ang ini-import pa ng AFP for training purposes and other firing purposes.
but the requirement is 40 million.
Yes, sir.
The requirement is 40 million. Lahat-lahat
No,
na
no, no.
yan,
It is more than 40 million, sir.
mga ilan po ang requirement?
Siguro about 60. more or
60
less.
million.
Yes, sir.
In which 20 million is imported.
Yes, sir.
So one-third is imported.
Yes, yes.
So
more or less.
30% of our requirement for bullets for the AMP,
For small arms only, sir.
for small arms
Yes,
lang,
yes,
yung basic lang natin is imported. No? Saan po galing yung 30% na yun? Anong bansa ho yun? Ano lang this is just to give us an idea, no? And you can actually submit to us a confirmatory document later on, but for the purposes of our discussion, para at least may idea po lahat kung ano yung logic nitong bill na ito, because we have to go to the basics first before we understand the logic why we are pushing this bill, no? So, saan po nanggagaling yung 20 million na bullets?
So we do not pinpoint where to get it. We resort to public bidding. Whoever
More or less lang po.
wins,
In the last...
some are from Brazil,
Okay.
Korea, yes, sir. Spain,
Okay.
even Euro countries, sir.
Okay. So, various
And South
countries po.
Africa, yes, sir.
Sige po, sir.
The
You
truth, sir, is 100% is being imported because all the raw materials are coming abroad.
Correct.
So that is we have the brass, which is composed of nickel. We produce so much nickel in the country, and copper, but we do not produce those. That's the irony of it. But all the things, all the raw materials are being imported. So the truth is, all the ammunitions, the components of ammunitions, are being imported by abroad, sir.
Okay.
That's
I was going to mention that. I didn't want to go into a much detailed discussion because yung 40 million na pinoproduce natin supposedly here are actually imported.
are imported. sir.
Because
These are
yung
all
raw
imported.
material niya galing rin
We
sa abroad.
only
no?
assemble, but we
But,
have the truth is
I
we
think
have
for the purposes of discussion, because if we go more upstream, medyo haba in discussion, but for the purpose of discussion, what the GA produces, which is about 40 million bullets, comes from their facility. Correct po. Sa PNP, ilan po ang in-import nyo at ilan po ang galing sa GA?
Mr. Chair, I don't have the documents here right now for...
Ano lang, ballpark figure, no? Para may alam lang ho tayo. May idea ba ho kayo? Are you the correct resource persons to...
Hindi po tayo assign sa logistics.
sige
Logistics
po,
po yung
sige
may
po.
hawak.
Sige po, we'll go by na lang with the AFB numbers na 30% po ng bala nanggagaling sa abroad, no? And 70% minamanufacture ho dito, but of course the raw material, sabi nga ni Yusek, I agree, galing rin sa abroad, no? But
That's for small arms, sir.
That's for small arms. But of
ammunition,
course, the more complex firearms
are all
eh,
sourced outside.
goes without saying galing sa abroad ho
Yes,
yan. No? So we're just looking at to be self-sufficient, at least man lang doon sa mga basic equipment natin, which is the small arms equipment. No? That's what we are after here. General Casabar, you're
Sir, regarding your question on the PNP requirements, practically, sir, if we have quantities in excess of the 40 million, theoretically we could sell out of the fund transfer coming from the PNP, but this is very minimal. So most of the requirements outside of the ammunition manufactured through GAA funds are coming from the outside. Meaning it could be manufactured by the Arms Corps, but still more are coming from the outside of the country.
I was going to go to that, no? Since AFP already, sa AFP kulang na, malamang malaking tsansa wala nang napupunta sa PNP. Correct? So in other words, lahat po ng bala ng PNP imported. Correct?
May arms corps din po, tsaka yung...
My Arms Corps, which is, well, Arms Corps is, we'll go to that later on. No? But when I say imported, it's coming from the private sector being imported or locally, ano, no? So I would assume also that the entire bullets being supplied to PNP are imported.
Yes po.
Okay. My next question ho is, dun po sa General Arsenal right now, are we only producing bullets? Are we producing small arms, basic rifle? Meron ba ho tayong ganun na production in that facility?
We are not producing small arms yet, but we are producing parts of the small arms of the armed forces. Only parts. So we do some repair for the firearms of the armed forces of the Philippines.
Meron ho tayong parts production and repair facilities.
Yes, sir.
Pero po yung barrel itself,
No, we
yung
still
mga
cannot,
rifle itself,
we cannot do the barrel and we cannot do the bolt assembly.
so all of those, for example, PNP will refurbish its rifles. Pwede hong gawin sa GA.
Yes, minus the bolt and the barrel.
Saan ba nanggagaling yung mga ganun na parts?
Binibili po in-import.
Import rate
Yes,
yun.
sir.
Import rate yun.
Yes, sir.
But in your opinion, General, can those be produced here
Yes.
in the Philippines?
We could do it here, but still we will be needing equipment to manufacture them.
Okay. Are those equipment something that Filipinos cannot make?
We,
Those
we,
are-
we
it's-
need
those are
precise
special-
equipment, and
Di ba natin as Filipinos can make those barrel, those bolts? Because in my opinion, these are very mechanical equipment. No? I don't think it's high tech or ano, no. You need precision equipment, pero hindi naman hindi naman siya parang microchip na high tech, no.
kailangan din siguro bang manggagaling yung equipment, sir, and then we do some improvisations here. Meaning, i-retool mo ng konti, palitan mo ng iba, kaya natin. But the machine itself should
But
be
given the right
coming.
equipment, can we produce it here? For example, the Senate and Congress will give you appropriations to buy precision equipment. Can you manufacture it here?
Yes, yes, sir.
Kaya po.
Kaya po.
Walang problema ho yun.
Sir, may I add?
You said-
If Arms Corps, the Philippine manufacturer, can produce some of our rifles and pistols, the government arsenal can provide that, sir. If you go to Indonesia, sir, in Bandung, Indonesia, they produce all their equipment in their armed forces, the small arms, as well as the rifles, as well as sniper rifles, and even their artillery equipment, as well as their armor vehicles are produced in Indonesia, in Bandung, Indonesia. We believe that we have that potential in our armed forces, sir. If Congress will provide us the money. Our neighboring countries are already producing their own equipment. Tayo po yung pinakahuli. Yung mga amo po natin, hindi nga natin napoproduce most of our ammunition requirement for our small arms. And these are the basic requirements of the armed forces, and yet we cannot provide our police and our armed forces.
Mr. Chair.
Kong Joet,
Yes. Mr. Chair, may I ask our government arsenal regarding their roadmap? No, wag muna natin muna sama yung intentions nito pong bill natin. Pero without this, ano po yung roadmap ng government arsenal in terms of improving the production?
Sir, allow me to answer that being the Assistant Secretary for Logistics, wherein under namin, sir, yung government arsenal, sir. For the roadmap, sir, we have what we call the second horizon ng aming modernization. And the government arsenal needs 16.2 billion for manufacturing plant ng small arms at saka nung kanilang powder, manufacturing of the powder.
That's dollars? Pesos?
16.2 billion pesos.
Pesos.
Ngayon, if I may add, regarding kung kaya ba natin, actually ang requirement for modernizing government arsenal or even modernizing AFP is so much, malaking amount na hindi naman namin pwedeng kayanin ng AFP, that we need to have, kailangan namin kasi bumili ng materials na makakatipid kami. At the same time, kaya nga wini-welcome namin itong proposal na magkaroon ng SPEDA, because we will reduce the cost at the same time we will be having a revenue center. Lalo kumita kami because of the use of government arsenal, at the same time ma-lower namin yung cost. Right now, yung ang government arsenal, hindi niya kayang mag-fully modernize because hindi naman namin kaya niyang makabili ng pag-produce lang kasi ng powder requires 9 billion pesos. 9 billion. So mapilitan din talaga mag-import something like that.
Mr. Chair, ano ho yung status nitong proposal niyo for improvement of the government arsenal? Specifically, ito pong proposed 16.2 billion. Is it moving? Is it facing obstacles?
Right now, nai-propose na namin to sa DBM for fund support, yung 16.2 billion. Wala pang hanggang andun pa lang sa request ng fund support.
And then lastly, Mr. Chair, currently, yung cost natin of producing these bullets, how are we comparing with that of imports? Are we higher? Are we lower? In terms of cost of production natin and in comparing it with the price of importing them?
Yun namang cost ng small arms, maaring kapantay lang sa prevailing sa market. But I could not compare it yung cost ng mga bomba, yung high caliber arms natin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kong. I can see ASEC Ramos, and I think the title of ASEC Ramos, Self-Reliance Defense Posture. No? Kayo yata yung point person pagdating sa self-sufficiency and self-reliance. Is there, what is the implication of importing 30% of our small arms and bullets from abroad? Is there a national security, what is the national security implication?
Sir, good morning, sir. Sir, I think we have no wherewithal to use our ammunition. We have no ready reserve of ammunition for our troops in case of emergency will occur. So we are always dictated by the importation or supply of of ammunition supply to other countries. Just like what happened to Marawi and other insurgencies that we have since the total war in 2001, sir. We almost expended all our ammunition and our bombs. So we are dependent really. So we want to have a self-sufficiency in our war reserves, like the ammunition, sir. That's why we want to have a self-defense special economic zones. As to what ASIC Avila have said, the DND always, first of all, leasing, or we have to also our equity to be our land. So if ever the Congress will grant us the 6.5 billion, we will have all the wherewithal to be independent on our production of small arms and ammunition. But right now, sir, we have no funds, so we always offer to our proponent our land, in which many countries like Israel, South Africa, and Korea have already given their intention. It's a matter of fusing all our laws, like the Foreign Investment Act of 1991, wherein the equity of the foreign ownership is limited only to 40%, and the local ownership is to 60%. And other laws like the 9184, in which the local competitors or local producer of ammunition, like the Arms Corps, could not compete because they are given some limitation, like they should have supplied to other two countries before they can compete on our local market, on our procurement, sir. So if ever that 30% or the 100% of ammunition will be produced in our country, anytime, sir, we could, our armed forces will be ready and equipped with their ammunition and armaments. Anytime, any exigency or insurgency or any security threat to our nation, we could always defend our nation, sir.
Sir, what is the, and maybe you can also...
Sir, there is a serious implications once you import all the requirement of the armed forces. This is a lesson learned by Indonesia when suddenly they stop all the spare parts as well as the munitions, when I think they have an internal security because some human rights concern in the Indonesia, I believe that time. So they stop producing, or they stop supplying Indonesia. That is a lesson learned by Indonesia. So there is a serious implication in importing all our defense and security material. So we need really a self-reliance in our defense there. So what is the implication if you are importing? You have a high level of reserve. So you need to have a basic load in your magazine or in your inventories. So you need a stock of ammunitions when you don't have the capability of producing the ammunitions. We believe that if we have the capability, then we will further improve also our training if you have an ammunitions that is set. The ammunition that is being produced will also determine the state of training of our security forces, because if you have less ammunitions produced, then your training in marksmanship will become lesser, or the sophistication goes down. So I believe in order to have a strong defense, this basic requirement of armed forces should be manufactured here in country, sir. Thank you very much.
Yusik, what you're saying, because we're importing 30%, no? Or an equivalent of 20 million rounds, we are not on stable ground in terms of national...
I believe, sir.
In terms of national security.
Yes, sir. Because once we spend all the ammunitions, then you have in quandary to where to get all the other ammunitions. So it is a serious problem, sir. Even we can have those executive sessions if in trying to determine what really is the level of ammunition reserve that we must have if we do not produce our ammunitions.
Even so, USEC, Congress and Senate will assure you, I'm just, again, I'm throwing hypothetical questions, will assure you that we will have funds to import all of your requirements. I-assure ho kayo ng Congress, Senate na may pera. Is that still considered a national security threat? We'll assure you that we have funds to import that 30%. Sigurado ho yan. But do you still think that 30% deficiency is still a national security threat?
Yes, sir, because we're dependent on the supply of the foreigners, so they can dilly-dally with the supply, sir. We cannot really demand you deliver this on this day, sir.
Were there an instance wherein we had problems sourcing bullets?
Yes, sir, in Total
May pera
War,
tayo pero walang
Total
bili.
War in 2001 and the Marawi, sir.
Marawi,
Yes, sir.
itong
Sa-
2000
yes, sir, and the bombs, sir, and the bombs we did in the Marawi, sir. We almost expended our
Can you
resources.
elaborate further po itong
There might-
scarcity of bullets? May
there-
pera tayo. Binigyan ng
There
pera.
might be some security implications, sir. We could discuss this later.
But okay, let me just broad lang to, no? I don't want you to go into details rin. Broad lang to. So there was an instance during the Marawi that we could not source we cannot source bullets.
Yes, sir, but we found some allies, sir, to supply us, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I'd like to emphasize the SRDP, sir, because the SRDP, they say that SRDP is just SRDP, but there are some numerous laws that really go against the SRDP, Self-Reliance Defense Program, sir. Because like the Foreign Investment Act, and we welcome this kind of special economic zone so that there will be special laws purely for defense. So that SRDP really on our ammunition, our armaments will prosper.
No. Again, hypothetical question, Asek. Will there be a scenario in the future wherein there will be scarcity of bullets?
Yes, sir.
Meron bang ganun na scenario?
There will be.
Okay. And is there a scenario wherein countries will not sell to the Philippines?
There is, sir. That's just like what happened in our helicopter. They give some conditions before Canada will supply us helicopters.
So it's very clear that there will be a scenario wherein bullets will not be sold to the Philippines,
Yes, sir.
even though may pera tayo.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Because of political end, sir.
Okay. Yes, General, you're raising your hand.
Sir, in addition to that, it takes more than a year before we could procure ammunition, even components. So we have to go on with the bidding process and the delivery. From the start of the bidding to the delivery, it takes more than a year. So that is a condition which we have to get ourselves into.
So the vision here, and if I understand it correctly from the DNE, the vision here is for SPEDEZA will be a tool for government to be self-reliant, at least in the first stage, the basic requirements like bullets and small firearms. Step by step muna tayo, no? I don't think we can build tanks right away, no? But step by step muna
And
tayo.
maybe on other munitions, sir, because it does not only the defense requirements does not deal only with the ammunition and small arms. It also deals with other equipment needed by our soldiers in the field.
So,
Force protection,
General,
etc.
give me your vision for SPEDEZA in the next 5 years. Ano po ang vision ano ba yung nakikita nyo para dito po sa SPEDEZA? No?
I believe, sir, that is the basic questions about the basic requirement of ammunition as well as firearms, small arms. That is a good reason for SPEDEZA to be there, so that we can have a sustainable requirements of our armed forces. So we need to have at least a certain percentage, probably a percentage for the manufacturing of our ammunitions from the pistol and the pistol as well as rifle. And another basic, sir, is our 40 mm requirement of our armed forces. But the small arms, we can already provide or be manufactured in the PDESA, sir. That is a very good reason for us to have a PDESA in the first phase of the zone, sir.
And General Casbar, have you reduced this into a written yung tinanong kanina ni Congressman Jot, a written strategy or roadmap, no? So that we will have some form of formal business plan or roadmap for SPEDESA. The vision definitely has been articulated here, but it will have, we will need a more substantial document, no, to justify the creation of SPEDESA. Importante ho dito yung roadmap and sabi nga ni Kong, the vision for SPEDESA, because now we understand the need. No? Nakita natin, we understand the need. The need here is we're not self-reliant or self-reliant on bullets. And in terms of equipping our soldiers on the ground, we need to be reliant on the basic materials. Now the next step is, what is the roadmap? No? We'll be reliant, and what is the roadmap for the next 5, 10, 20 years? Meron na ba ho tayong ganun?
Yeah, in line of our Horizon 2 and siguro roadmap na rin ng government arsenal, yung aming 5-year program for government arsenal, yung program namin, at least makapag-manufacture na tayo ng bullets na dito natin ginagawa, yung powder dito na ginagawa, at least yung powder dito na ginagawa. And we have a manufacturing plant, increased capacity, wherein yung lahat ng requirement ng AFP and pwede rin sa PNP ma-address niya. Actually, tatlo yung project ng government arsenal. The bullets, the force protection, the rifles, and the rifles. Tatlo sila at least, itong Horizon 2 na tinatawag namin yung sa modernization. So, we can share with you our plans for government arsenal.
Pakisubmit na lang po dito sa committee yung roadmap, no? Because now we need to see the vision, where are we going? Because once we enact this law, hindi pwedeng tsaka lang natin gagawin yung roadmap, no? We have to have a roadmap before we enact the law, because that is a basic ingredient of this law. And this law is quite powerful, no? So that may incentives na binibigay, we're creating a new entity, so we need the roadmap ahead of time. No?
We will submit, sir.
Sir, I think SPDS is the first step to this self-reliance program. Also, we have a lot of proposal coming in from other countries, sir. Equity lang natin lupa sir, sa GA, they respected it, sir. At the same time, an assurance that all the procurement, like the rifles, ammunition, tayo una sir ng magiging customer. Tsaka yung mga police. Ang problema lang, sir, mayroon pa problema sa mga, sinabi ko kanina sa mga other laws. Next, sir, we want to also emphasize why SND should be the chairman. Because this technology transfer, we want to secure the technology of other countries to be accidentally be gotten by other unauthorized persons. Also, the GA should be secured by the DND because it is a defense industry. Security is at a must at that area, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to siguro highlight what you were discussing earlier with regards to the vision roadmap for our economic zone. Kasi ASEC Manuel mentioned that locators or investors are already lining up to enter as potential partners. But we cannot also just rely on those who are lining up because we have our own set of needs. Meron tayong mga sarili nating requirements. So I guess yun yung sinasabi ni Chair kanina na kailangan malinaw ano ba yung needs natin, ano yung step-by-step na gagawin ng ating economic zone and the authority so that we're not just relying on who's lining up to enter our facility, but we are in fact choosing which ones to allow and then which ones will greatly benefit the AFP in our country. So mahalaga po yung nabanggit nyo, Mr. Chair, na malinaw dapat yung ating plano para ho dito sa authority.
Will comply, sir.
Thank you, Congressman. And Congressman Joet and I are all for the support to our troops and our soldiers on the ground. we're finding ways and funds to make sure that their needs are being supported, upgraded, and continuous supply will be accorded to them. Kung pwede nga yung bala, unli na sana ho, no? But of course, we have a lot of things that we have to fix. But then again, no, the intention really here, at the end, really, sa dulo ho naman nito, all of these discussions, at the end is really supporting our troops. No? We're all here really to find ways to make sure that our troops are being given the necessary equipment to enable them to protect and bring stability to our country. No? All of these are all paperwork, but at the end, yung buhay po ng sundalo ho natin ang pinakamahalaga ho dito. With that, we'll hear some comments from the private proponents. I think si Mrs. Gina from Arms Corps. No, I think you'll be one of the hopefully locators in this proposed zone.
Thank you very much, Senator Gatchalian and Congressman Garcia, and good morning to everyone. Arms Corps is fully supportive of the efforts to create a self-reliant defense industry here in the Philippines. We have been around as a manufacturer since 1955. We export to over 65 countries around the world, and most of our productions for export. And when we join trade fairs all over the world, defense shows, we see how the growth of the pavilions per country reflects the dynamic growth also of the country economically. So really, strong defense industries providing employment and so many other economic multiplier effects has an effect on the growth of the industry. We had once a very strong SRDP program here, a very strong defense industry. All that's being taken up here is very good, but we have to focus also on sustainability. It may be a good project, we have it starts off well, but how do we sustain it? So we're very supportive of this bill. We're very glad that there's a call to have a defense industrial zone here. Some countries have already invited Arms Corps to set up in their own industrial. They've even come here to visit our plant to see if we could go and establish factories in their countries. But dito muna tayo. Although Arms Corps has a factory already in the United States, we really want to support our Philippine government. That's why we have met a lot of times with the DND and the AFP. We've sat together and we have drafted a proposed bill called the Philippine Defense Industry Development Act. I think it was just filed by Yusek David in Congress. There's already a House bill number, and in the Senate, it's ongoing. Because if we do not solve the issues, the challenges that Arms Corps has faced to survive in this country, we can be sure that any locator we bring in will also face the same trials. So some of them are, for example, the end product, okay? The defense market is very limited. The products cannot be sold in the commercial market. So we must make sure that the orders of the AFP are sustainable to make the economic investment in putting up a facility be worth it. Because as experienced in the original SRDP program, there were about 15 companies that participated in this. All of us were given one big contract each. Once the contracts were delivered, nothing came. So all those other factories that were built for the specific purpose of making that product for the armed forces all collapsed. The only reason Arms Corps is still alive is because we had a commercial market where we could sell the other products we made. Because if you're going to have a company that comes in specifically for AFP, we have to go with the procurement law, bidding all the time. What if you spend like $10 million to put up a facility, you win one contract this year? What happens next year? There are other bidders. Others will join in. What do? You cannot sell that in the local market. That's against the law. So what do? So very important is sustainability, and that's why we have the proposed Philippine Defense Industry Development Act that already tried to iron out all the issues we faced. Another issue is in the procurement law, single largest contract. It means that if there is a bid, let's say for 1 million pesos, you must have served already a contract worth 500,000. So if you're a new locator, a new company set up here, how can you even supply if you've never supplied before? How do you meet the single largest contract? And that is why, that is one of the issues we wanted waived for defense industry in the PDIDA, because everything has to be bidded out. So we want that there be, for specific sensitive items, negotiations be allowed. Okay, and then the other thing is sometimes, for example, the AFP modernization plan, importation is tax-free and duty-free. But if you deliver it locally, you're not tax-free, duty-free. So if you're going to have a factory of a foreign company set up in this Bataan export processing zone, and they deliver to the AFP, they're no longer tax-free, duty-free because it's a local delivery. So that factory might say, oh, why do I have to put up a factory in Bataan? I'll just expand the facilities in the foreign country and just ship to the Philippines if and when I win the contract, because there's no investment that's fixed. So these are some of the issues that we're hoping that the PDIDA will address, because this is a very good plan. We've been really wanting self-reliance to take off in this country because of the economic benefits, not just for defense, but for the Filipino people. But we need, very important, how do we sustain it? You ask, how come Armscor doesn't supply all the time? In some bids, they tell us, oh, you have to be NATO certified. How can Armscor be NATO certified when the Philippines is not a NATO country? Diba? So we have issues like that, which we hope can be addressed, not just here, but in the PDIDA. So through this law, the bill for the economic zone, that's well and good, but we have to look at sustainability also. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think a lot of your comments are related to the procurement law. Although we can somehow tweak it in this law, giving due preference to the locators inside the special economic zone. I think one of the visions of the AFP for this, or the DND for this, is really to have this entire chain of arms and ammunition manufacturing. Kumbaga, lahat nandoon, one-stop shop na siya. No? All the parts, everything doon na ginagawa, ina-assemble para doon na lang pupunta. I think that is the eventual vision. No? And the end result of that really is kung ano yung pinuproduce sa loob nitong special economic zone. The first customers will be the AFP and the PNP, and yung balance, export or private sector. No? Ganunin basa ko ho dito. Ngayon, to achieve that goal, we can tweak it in the bill. No? Of course, yung sinasabi niyo ho kanina, yung mga special tax accommodation, that will be honestly met with a lot of fire, but we can discuss that. No? The goal here, ang importante lang naman, how do we make this, like you said, sustainable and successful? Because if you don't put those ingredients in place, from the start, failure na siya kaagad. Baka walang mag-locate ho dito. So yun po yung concern ho natin. But my question, ma'am, is given this, itong proposed bill, no? I don't know if you've read this proposed bill. Will you, as an entrepreneur, locate your facilities here in the proposed economic zone, defense economic zone? Saan ho ang inyong facility ngayon?
Mr. Senator, our factory is located, the Philippine factory is located in Marikina, over a 5-hectare property. We manufacture both small arms and small arms ammunition.
Okay. Well, basic question. Can you supply the 20 million bullets required by the military? Do you have that capacity?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Armscor produces about 200 million rounds of ammunition a year and about 200,000 assorted firearms a year. However, as I mentioned, there are challenges in the
Procurement law.
procurement law.
Okay. But in terms of capacity, you can.
In terms of capacity, yes.
And looking at this proposed bill, will you relocate your facility to this? Will you be the first locator to the Special Defense Economic
It
Zone?
depends, as I was mentioning, that's why we're really proposing. I was telling them, where is the contract, right? If Armscor has been established in that area since 1955. Most of our employees come from that area. We have a very big factory, which I really want to extend an invitation for you to come and visit. For us to relocate there will be very, very costly, but we don't mind setting up a new corporation there. But more than that, what is the incentive to us? Tax incentives, I can get that from any export processing zone that we've been. Why defense? So that's what I was talking to them about. You must tie it up with a long-term contract in defense item. For example, my other question is, you're going to open it up to locators. We have a very small market. Are you going to have people compete with each other? Like aside from Armscor and ammunition manufacturer, will you bring in other ammunition manufacturers? Will be all competing for the same small pie? We have to think about that also. But we're very, very supportive. We're always very supportive of armed forces. We go out of our way to make special considerations because it is our country and we're patriotic. And as we met in the reservists, Armscor has its own reserve battalion too. So marami kaming ginagawa.
Ma'am, will you expand, siguro, maybe not relocate, no? Relocate is very costly, but expand your operations to this facility. Given the fiscal incentives enumerated in this bill, as an entrepreneur, will you consider expanding in Bataan, in this special economic zone?
Yes, we will consider that,
Consider that.
definitely.
So
as
enough
part
na.
of our expansion.
So in short, enough na ho yung mga nakasulat ho ditong
Hindi po.
eka-
That's why, anyway, we can add more incentives really for local industry.
Ma'am, can you please one by one, no, give us your idea on the other things that you want to be your wish list, no, to expand in this area, because we also want to see the side of the entrepreneurs, no, the manufacturers. Kayo po yung target na locator ho dito, aside from GA, the government arsenal, expanding their facility, but the vision here I can see is to attract the private sector to put up their own facility, not limited to small arms, but hopefully in the future we will manufacture vehicles, tanks, and other things, no? But importante ho makita namin yung ano ba yung gusto nyo para mag-expand kayo dito, no?
Yes, thank you.
Within reasonable terms, ma'am.
Yes, very definitely. We will come up with our checklist, but maybe one of the things I would like to propose here is that we need production needs planning. For example, as they mentioned, we do not have our own propellant powder in this country. Okay? So propellant powder has to be imported. So we are dependent on the production capability of a foreign company. So it takes time because, for example, we use a very good powder which is used by most of the armies around the world because it's a St. Mark's General Dynamics company. Aside from the production that we have to wait for, the shipping, it's very difficult to ship propellant powder, so much so that we always have to charter a vessel to come here just to bring that. And all of that takes time. Sometimes it can take a year to find a vessel. So if you ask us, can we supply? Well, if we don't have the powder here in this country, even if we have the production capability, we will not be able to supply it. So what we need actually is a production schedule so that we know what you need, we can produce it properly, and make sure that all the raw materials are here on a timely basis. We are a private company, so we cannot just stock a lot of this material, which is very expensive, just in case the armed forces needs it, diba? We cannot stock, that's very the brass is very expensive, which we also have to import. So we need a production schedule, because also, let's face it, collection time in the government is also it's a challenge. So, if we have to invest in the raw material, no, wait for it for months to come, produce it, deliver it to the government, and then wait for payment, kailangan super malalim yung bulsa nyo to afford to wait that. So those are the challenges we've had. Planning is very important, that we know. Not like now, we know, magkakaroon ng bid next month, o ito, okay. Next year, magkakaroon ng bid na ganito. Mahirap sa planning yun if you don't know what to expect. But if we work together and say, deliver so much on this schedule, that's more workable, so we can make sure that the raw materials come. As the director has said, none of the raw materials of ammunition are found in this country. It's sad to know that copper is mined here, but it goes abroad and converted into brass in another country and comes to us very expensive. So we're really looking forward if the arsenal can produce brass, can produce propellant powder. Those are very basic. If we don't have that here in this country, we have to wait until we can order from abroad. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I know from Ms. Gina, you mentioned earlier the need for yung long-term contracts, and you also mentioned that previously there were these long-term contracts that didn't push through. Can you tell this committee what happened?
This is the first time the original Self-Reliance Defense Posture Program under President Marcos. So we were making rifles here, the Elitool, Colt. We even had our mortars, avionics, Crescent, marami. Okay? We were even making our own armored vehicles, the Simba, in Tarlac or Cavite. But all of these companies were given one contract, and once they delivered, as I mentioned earlier, it was not supported. Payments were made, but no other contract was given by the government. And that's why also during the original SRDP, local suppliers were supposed to have a 15% price advantage over imported. But unfortunately, when the Philippine competition law came in, this advantage was also removed. And yet, the AFP modernization, which exempts imported from duties and taxes, is still in effect. So,
Thank you, ma'am. Wag ho kayo mag-alala. The Congressman Garcia will assure you of a port, no, and a seaport near to this economic zone. In fact, I was asking Kong Joet how far is the port, no? Malapit lang yata, a few minutes lang, General Casbar, no? How far po is the port from this facility? Or the nearest sea area?
Maribeles, sir, is more or less less than an hour.
At least, so mas malapit ho yung
Limay Port is about 10 minutes.
10 minutes from the nearest...
Yes, but Lamaw Port, kaya lang ito yung more or less ang Petron na yung nagdadaong dyan eh.
But it can be used
Yes. I think we can
bring
use
in, let's say, gunpowder,
Yes.
other materials. At least so mas malapit
Sir,
kaysa sa Marikina. Marikina ho, walang tubig ho doon.
Sir,
Ito
in
malapit.
support to the previous speaker, Madam Gina, the propellant powder is on our roadmap. Ang isang problema lang talaga natin dito, sir, is the metal industry, metal requirement. Kasi pati scrap namin, binebenta namin, then dadalhin na naman sa labas ng country, babalik dito, strips. Dito nga nanggagaling yung pinaka-raw material ng metal, sir. But, darating dito sa atin, ito yung ginagawa natin ng mga bullets at saka cases. So, if this is done, kung may maganda yung metal industry natin dito, I think pwede pa tayong maka-encourage ng locators dito sa country natin. Or else, sir, ganun pa rin siguro. Sila-sila lang. Because yung importation is a very challenging role for our locators.
I have, again, a very basic question. No? Looking at the needs of the AFP, looking at the needs of the PNP, now and the next 5 years, from your being an entrepreneur, are these two organizations an attractive market for entrepreneurs to tap? Given na may incentives na ho at magaling magbayad,
Yes.
no? We will assure na magbabayad sila on time, no? For example, of those conditions are met, maganda ba silang market for you being an entrepreneur in the defense industry?
Yes, definitely, Mr. Chairman. It's a very interesting because it's a steady industry. And from our experience, out of our 100%, we used to export 80% of our production. But lately, since we have been winning a lot of bids with the AFP and PNP, I'd say about 65% now is export, and the local market has taken up from the AFP and the PNP. But one of the other items, if I may address, is the one-stop shop that they are proposing. I'm hoping that this would include the PNP and the DTI. Why? Because when we have to do our import and export, normally we have to go through the Philippine National Police, located in Camp Crame, and the signatories go all the way up to Chief PNP. All right, for all those permits. The PNP now has satellite units, but I'm not sure the satellite units will be able to handle the import and export permits. On top of that, after that law was passed, we have the Strategic Trade Management Act, which requires also the Strategic Trade Management Office under the DTI to approve also all imports and exports. And then now we will have the the zone here. I hope we don't have to get another import-export permit from them. Sana lahat. If you really want to have, especially in line with the new Ease of Doing Business Act that was recently passed, I hope that all of these different organizations can streamline their efforts so that naman we can import and export continuously and not 1 year per activity because of all the permits that we have to secure. Thank you.
One of the special features of this bill is the establishment of a one-stop shop. We are cognizant of the numerous regulatory requirements to put up this type of businesses. So one of the special features of this bill is to put up a one-stop shop. No? Kasi nga alam natin na very stringent po yung regulation. No? So we will But it's good to hear that the AFP, the PNP, and government as a whole is a good market for your business. When you say that, I am also assuming that other entrepreneurs have the same sentiment. So, and that's again, the intention of this bill is really to entice the private sector to come in, do business with the government, hopefully in a sustainable manner. No? Kung mabilis ho sila magbayad. No? Alam ko yun ang sakit ng gobyerno, mabagal magbayad. But we'll probably include that siguro in the one-stop shop, pati yung bayad. Thank you, Ma'am Gina. And we'll go on with the other proponents, the other resource person. And this is actually on the other side of the goal. Here, the first is the proponents. The second are the hindi naman opponent, no? But I don't want to call opponent, pero But before that, we'll hear from DFA. Sir, Yusek, meron kayong comments?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Our secretary sends his regrets and regards. He's also in South Korea. Your Honor, the FA was mentioned in page 5, lines 13 to 16 of the proposed bill, and it mandates the authority to seek clearance from the DND and administrative guidance from the Department of Foreign Affairs as to relations with foreign entities or enterprises. Okay. We would like to stress, Your Honor, that some transactions and economic activities may impact on our bilateral or multilateral agreements, and they may also impact on our international commitments and diplomatic relations. For example, there are certain prohibitions and sanctions imposed on certain countries and corporations, and therefore we cannot do business with them. There are also sanctions and prohibitions on certain products, raw materials, delivery mechanisms, etc. So it might be prudent, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, to seek not just administrative guidance from DFA, but clearance as well, in the same way that clearance is sought from DND. We don't mean to add another burden on the locators, but we think that it's necessary considering the sensitivity of the matter. So if we may propose, Your Honor, perhaps we could amend these lines to remove the administrative guidance, but instead replace it with clearance. Thank you, Your Honor.
Di ba ho, Yusek, it will be another layer of bureaucracy? Add,
It is, Your Honor, and as I said, we don't mean to add another layer, but it's just necessary considering the circumstances, Mr. Chairman, because we need to comply with these international commitments and bilateral and multilateral agreements, Your Honor.
Thank you, Yusek. And we'll ask for a position paper later on.
Yes,
on
Mr.
this
Chairman.
matter. The next will be PEZA. Sir?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. First, the Director General of the PEZA would like to extend her apology for not being here today. Today is the board meeting of the PEZA. Now, undoubtedly, we see the bill as would actually benefit the country, particularly the armed forces. Now, we only have several comment on the proposed bill. First is, way back November 25 of 2011, the armed forces or the DND General Arsenal applied this particular property, the 340 hectares in Limay, for declaration as a special economic zone under the PEZA law. So this was subsequently approved, and on 2016, this was actually endorsed to the Office of the President for the issuance of the required presidential proclamation. But unfortunately, until now, it's not yet been issued proclamation because there are some deficiency on the documentary requirements, particularly the technical description that need to be rectified by the engineering department of the DND. So that's one of the comment of the PEZA. Second is that in the new mantra of the PEZA, we have this new programs under the law that would actually add to the traditional types of economic zone. We also have this defense industrial special economic zones that would actually declare special areas that is actually potential for being allocation for manufacturing of military hardwares and equipments of sorts, and give them the preferential policies as allocator enterprise in such economic zones. Now, there are some also position of the PEZA that's actually written by our legal, and I would ask our lawyer, Attorney Francis Brillantes, to give highlights on those, sir.
Honorable Chair, good afternoon. Good noon. Again, we understand that the goal of this bill is to satisfy the requirements of the armed forces and other law enforcement agencies. However, we see that there is no longer a need to legislate because under the Republic Act 7916, PESA as the enabling law, all the goals in which the bill wishes to achieve can already be done through PESA. As mentioned a while ago by our department manager, Emmanuel Cortero, the General Arsenal and the DND even applied with PESA in order for them to enjoy PESA incentives. For those who are not aware on how PESA works, PESA is an investment promotion agency which grants incentives. These incentives attracts investments and these investors creates employment. So basically, a possible applicant or a developer or locator approaches PESA and applies or pre-screened. Then later on, our board of directors approves the same. Then later, it will be proclaimed by the office of the president. So in the case of Limay or the municipality of Limay, we are in the humble opinion that the defense ecozone industry should not be limited only in the municipality of Limay because PESA having national scope in terms of jurisdiction can proclaim any part of the country as an industrial or a defense industrial economic zone. And another benefit if we would just use the PESA model is that it will save costs on the part of the government. I believe the earmark budget for the SPEDESA is 3 billion. And the trust of the government is to have eco zones put up at little or at no cost on the part of the government. PESA or through the modality of PESA that can be achieved because under Section 5 of our charter, eco zone development can be put up through the following. Number one, through through private initiative. Number two, through local government initiative. Or number three, through the national agencies, through joint ventures. So, humbly, sir, we submit and the nitty-gritty of our position that there is no longer a need for legislation.
Attorney, you mentioned earlier that in 2001, the PESA board approved the conversion of GA into an economic zone.
Sir, it was
Correct.
approved by the board 2011.
In
November
2011, sorry, in
2011.
2011.
Yes.
In
Your Honor.
2011. And subsequently, it was passed to the, or it was transmitted to the Office of the President, although it was never approved by the Office of the President.
You're correct, Your Honor. It was not granted the proclamation yet because they found some deficiency on the documentary requirements. In addition, they also would want to seek for the favorable endorsement of the new Secretary of the DND, which is Secretary Lorenzo.
The application to the Office of the President still is a live and valid application.
Yes, sir. They're just waiting for that particular document.
Have they fulfilled the requirements
Not
being
yet.
sought?
Not yet. We're still waiting for the DND to comply.
Who will require the where will they submit the requirements, to PESA or to OP?
They will submit the documents to PESA and we will transmit it to the Office of the President, Your
Okay.
Honor.
So hindi pa ho sila
They haven't
nakakakompleto.
submitted yet.
Okay. And but the application is still valid.
Still valid.
So kung
Your Honor.
nag-submit sila ng mga requirements, papasok nyo sa OP, may proclamation na.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ano po ang kasi right now we have what you're saying is there are two ways of achieving the goal, no? One through the PESA through the PEZA modality, and the other through the SPEDEZA, or the creation of the authority modality. No? What is the advantage going with the PEZA modality?
One is we already have the established policy in PEZA. Once proclaimed by the President, all the proponents have to do is to apply with the PEZA for registration as a locator enterprise. So they get all the preferential policies, the incentives that are granted by the PEZA. These are the fiscal incentives and also those non-fiscal incentives, including tax and duty-free importation of capital equipment, including raw materials. Now, in PEZA, we have this ease of doing business, which is actually substantial to the sufficiency of the locator enterprises in such a way that, for example, the IMPEX, the import-export in PEZA, we have this memorandum of agreement with the Bureau of Customs, and also we have this memorandum of agreement with the PNP for those, for those regulated chemicals and substance as used by the locator companies for their raw materials. So we also have the MOA with the EMB, for example, for the issuance of the ECC. In 20 days, it has to be issued by the EMB, otherwise it will now be deemed approved. So those kinds of ease of doing business in terms of issuing the permits and licenses with regard to the building permits, if they do the facility inside the economic zones, those are the non-fiscal incentives that we grant to the locator enterprise. Now, in terms, we only have that concern with regard to the export threshold, because under the AFP Modernization Act, 100% of that particular manufactured goods of the locator company should be for the armed forces of the Philippines. But in PEZA, we are basing the incentives. One is the investment priority plan. If they're the preferred industry, then they qualified for the income tax holiday. And also the export threshold, which is the basis, this is the AO226, which is the Omnibus Investment Code. So in PEZA, we have this threshold. If it's a foreign company who are actually registered with the PEZA, they have to at least export the finished product 70%. They can only be allowed to sell to the local market up to 30%. If it's a Filipino company, the threshold is 50-50. Now, with the AFP Modernization Act, that would actually encourage the locator company to actually supply the finished product 100% to the local market. What we did with the Renewable Energy Act, to support that particular act, we asked the PEZA board to allow the this policy to be relaxed in such a way that this particular company who would manufacture biofuels would be allowed to sell to the local market 100% until such time that the country will now be independent in the importation of these blended fuels. So we can also do this with regard to the threshold, the export threshold when it comes to the manufacture of ammunition, for example, military equipments for this.
The way I understand it, let's make it, again, go back to the basics. In your modality, in your setup, kung ako po, like Armscor, I want to invest in that economic zone, I go to PEZA and apply, correct? I get all my paperwork done, all my fiscal incentive requirements, all my regulatory requirements, and then I go to, in this case, the GA, the government arsenal, and I talk to them regarding my physical requirements, correct? And they will be the one managing the area. That's how the setup will be, correct? So, the other setup is sila na bahala lahat, By creating an authority, they handle the fiscal incentives, the marketing, the sourcing of locators, as well as the management of the area, correct? So kung ako yung locator, hindi ba mas maganda isa na lang kausap ko?
Well, in PEZA, we have this public economic zone, and we also have the private. Most of the economic zone under PEZA are actually run by the private sector. We only have 4 public economic zones which are actually regulated, managed, actually financed and developed by the government, and these are the public zones. Now, the locator companies, when it comes to
Public zones, they can do the administration of the fiscal incentives and the marketing of the economic zone.
correct, sir, it's the PESA who owns the economic zone.
In their case, this is a government-owned property. You get what I'm saying? Kasi pag sa setup nila, isa lang kausap po eh, no? PDEZA lang eh. But in your setup, dalawa eh, no? You have the physical aspect and then you have the fiscal incentives aspect, no? But in their case, it's merged into one, no? Thereby, it's for the locator, it's easier, no? It's easier for them, no? Because they only talk to one entity, no? In your setup ba, wala bang setup na no, PEZA locates there or you put up an office there para isa lang ang kausap?
No, in PESA, all our economic zone, we have an office. It's an administrative office that would house both the customs and the PESA for the operation of the entire locators.
In the zone
In the
itself?
economic zone itself.
Okay, okay. Okay. So again, what is the advantage? No? Because I can clearly see the advantage of having to talk to one entity as opposed to 2 entities. No? So what is the advantage going with your setup, with your modality? No?
Well, in PESA, we already have that established policy. No need for another authority to be passed. If there are locator in fact, Comtech is one of the locator who wanted to actually locate in the proposed economic zone in the government arsenal, who already came to PESA to register their operation, but we cannot do that because absence of the proclamation, it's not yet PESA.
The infrastructure portion, sir, because in the bill, part of the, I would assume, no, the 3 billion being requested in the bill will go to the build-up of the necessary infrastructure in that area. In your modality, no, for example, wala tong bill and then we go with your modality, how will we address the infrastructure portion?
Actually, sir, most of the economics on the PESA are actually initiated by the private sector. In PESA now, we have this program actually to have the ecozone development map so we can look for a possible joint venture of these proponents, the one owning the property, for a joint venture to develop the economic zone, to put up all the road network, all the facility requirement, the infrastructure inside the economic zone. So that's one of the program of the PESA, to look for joint venture. A private development company, either foreign or local, to finance the development of the economic zone.
Saying you can look for a private developer to partner with the DND to build the necessary infrastructure at no cost to the government. And you will also, PESA, through PESA, you will also assist in the marketing or the sourcing of the locators.
As far as PESA will be engaged in this particular project, we will just be here to administer the incentives that we granted the developer and also the locator companies.
How come yung mga ano ho, may mga special provisions here, like for example, the locator should sell 100% of its output to the government, no, before it can sell. Can you put that restriction to the locators?
The same that what we did with the Renewable Energy Act, we asked the board to allow these locator companies to sell 100% to the local market.
Pero pwede hong ganun rin with
Yes,
the defense. For example,
we can.
For example, Arms Corps, magtatayo ho sila ng paggawaan ng bala. Can we impose that all of your volume or output should be sold to the military before you can sell outside?
Sir, the way we see it, we will just be implementing the AFP Modernization Act. And second, every time a developer or locator registers with PESA, PESA and the developer locator enters into a registration agreement or supplemental agreement in which it embodies every condition that the parties concede so as to satisfying the requirements of the AFP and the law enforcement agencies. It can be stipulated already in the registration agreement even before they start operation.
You will use a different law to impose that, in other words, the AFP Modernization Act.
No, sir. Actually, it will complement, sir. The PESA law and the AFP Modernization Act will complement each other.
Mr. Chair, just to inform the committee also. Actually, in my discussions with DND, we were also waiting for the approval of the President for Government Arsenal, that area, to be declared under PESA so that we can already attract, let locators come in and build their facility inside the Government Arsenal. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we will not anymore push through with the bill. Kasi yun na po yung pinakamabilis na paraan para pumasok na yung locators. But as you can see, and based on the discussions earlier, it's still important, we still need to pass this bill because the defense economic zone, and especially the authority, is a very specialized economic zone. No, so kung titignan ho natin, number one, yung board. No, ibang-iba ho yung composition ng board ng PESA compared to the board that we are proposing for this bill. No, nabanggit nga ho earlier, I think 13 ho yung proposal sana, and then majority come from DND. No, kasi nga sila ho mas nakakaalam kung ano yung dapat gawin with regards to managing and running this economic zone. Second, yung revenue share. We want the AFP modernization to benefit from this undertaking. So that's why may proposal nga kanina na gawing 3% para ho talagang makatulong sa AFP modernization. I don't know if PESA would be amenable to that kind of a setup. And then third, there's nothing, if I remember right, there's nothing in the bill that makes defense industry or defense locators exclusive to the government arsenal. I don't think there's any provision that states na exclusive na lahat ng mga defense industry to locate or defense locators to locate in the government arsenal. With regards to the domestic market, actually, I think in most of the charters ng mga IPAs, including PESA, ang nakalagay sa batas, they can sell domestically. Pero yung 70-30, 60-40, or 100%, lahat yun ay nakalagay sa IRR. No? So, which means the authority, the one we're setting up, can also include that, no, na 100% mabenta niya locally, depending on the board approval. And then with regards to the funding that is included in the bill, no, yung 3 billion over 5 years if I'm not mistaken. That is, Mr. Chair, an assurance that we will develop the government arsenal, the property, the needed facilities so that we're able to attract locators. But it doesn't also mean that we cannot go into joint venture, no, with private companies in developing the economic zone as well, no, as mentioned earlier by the PESA. No, so pwede pa naman mag-joint venture. Maganda lang, meron tayong siguradong funding coming from the national government para mas madali natin maiplano. Kasi if we rely on PPP, syempre, it can come in, pwede rin hindi dumating. But if we have funding from the national government, mas masisiguro natin na matutuloy talaga yung roadmap, yung nakaplano for our defense economic zone. And then lastly, Mr. Chair, I'd like to mention our experience, no, in Bataan. Nabanggit kanina po yung mga publicly managed economic zones. So one of which is Mariveles. No? Mariveles, Cebu, Cavite, Baguio. These are the first 4 publicly managed economic zones. It was under PESA. In 2010, a law was created to separate Bataan and have its own authority. The reason is, again, no offense to PEZA, yung principle of subsidiarity, meaning decisions are better made locally by the local people. No, so dito kasi nangyari, instead na umaabot pa sa board ng PEZA yung mga decisions sa kailangan gawin sa Bataan Export Processing Zone, ngayon with the authority of the Freeport area of Bataan, agad na solve, no? Nasosolve, agad na nagagawa ng programa o kaya proyekto yung mga kinakailangan ng economic zone. So mas mabilis, no? Mas mabilis po yung response ng authority compared to having a central board managing different economic zones, and then siyempre ang dami nilang iniisip. Malayo talaga yung difference with a special authority managing that special economic zone. And I think the results will show that this is really beneficial. No? So from having less than 10,000 employees in 2010, the Freeport area of Bataan now has more than 40,000 employees. From 33 locators, now there are 128 locators. And then recently, no, because of the Train 2 bill, no, so we tried to defend and show the Department of Finance na yung for every peso spent in the authority of the Freeport area of Bataan, 6 pesos 45 centavos came back to the economy and to the government. No, and actually, I have a breakdown pero hindi ko na lang ho babanggitin. So lumalabas, malaki ho yung naging dividends, malaki ho yung bumalik, return on investment para sa gobyerno with what happened to the Freeport area of Bataan. So, syempre, may konting cost talaga in setting up a new authority, but I think based on the need of this particular economic zone, mas mabilis din at mas lalaki yung ating return on investment. Also, I just like to mention, nandito rin po ang DOF, sa charter ng Freeport area of Bataan, meron din similar provision that requires the national government to give, to support the Freeport to a tune of 500 million a year. No, but since it started in 2010, actually, Mr. Chair, 100 million lang ang nabibigay every year. No? So from that time until now, if I'm not mistaken, I think nasa 750 million yung nabigay ng national government. No, so, but still, even with that support from national government, nag-grow pa rin talaga yung Freeport area of Bataan. So sa huli, I guess it really depends on the vision, the blueprint, and how it's implemented. I think very important po dito yung principle of subsidiarity na as much as possible, no, decisions will have to be made locally because they know what's best since they're at the local level. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kong Joet. And I think to continue our discussion, we'll ask the opinion of the remaining resource persons. Before I continue pala, kay Yusek David, no? Yusek, because what I understand right now from PEZA, no, meron kayong dalawang application. No? May application kayo sa PEZA at may application kayo sa Kongreso, which is what we are discussing right now. No? So these are very distinct modalities. No? Ano ba ho ang inyong direction? No? Are you still pursuing your PEZA application, or are you pursuing this application here in Congress and the Senate?
Sir, we are pursuing our initiative this initiative in the Special Economic Zone for Defense. So that is our latest position in the Department of Defense.
Will you be withdrawing your application from PEZA? Baka biglang lumabas yung presidential proclamation. Tama si Kong Joet, no? It's mutually exclusive, but for us, it sends a wrong signal to the Congress na meron na kayong ganun. Then the senators might interpret it na, meron na palang proclamation. Bakit pa kailangan ng batas, no? So we are now in effect repealing the proclamation, no? So ano po ang intention niyo?
Sir, precisely we are here. Is our position will be on the passage of this law. But we will be firm on our position as soon as our secretary will provide you our position based on the advice of our secretary as soon as he arrives, sir. We'll provide you our definite position on this, sir.
Thank you. Yusek, baka biglang i-follow up ni Attorney Brillanes sa OP, lumabas ho bukas yan, hindi na ho namin, baka magalit ho sa amin Malacanang when we approve this, because in effect we're repealing that proclamation, no, by this Republic Act, no. Kasi it's already been hurdled in the lower house, eh. So this is the next step, no. So
yes,
medyo advanced stage na rin to. Advanced stage na in both, no. So it's really you have to decide whether you want to go with the PEZA modality or the legislative modality.
There are so many advantages that we see in the enactment of a law. So, but surely, sir, we'll provide you the definite positions and also in courtesy to PESA.
Yes, I think we will need the decision of the Secretary and the DND family as to which modality you want to pursue. No? But both modalities are in their advanced stages. No? So we don't want a scenario wherein we'll run some conflict later on. No? So as soon as possible, ho, mabigay ho sa amin yung decision. No? But we'll continue to hear because duty bound ho kami in the Senate to hear the bills enacted by the lower house. No? So that's why we're here. No? The next resource person is DOF.
Sir, may I comment on
Attorney?
Sir, the DND and PESA are in the same team, and it just so happened that they are pursuing two modalities to achieve their goals, and we understand that. But as far as PESA is concerned, they still have a valid application with us, and we think that the remedy or the path that you want to take is not mutually exclusive. So in the event that the area is proclaimed as a special defense ecozone and later on a bill is passed, of course, in effect, the bill will absorb the already proclaimed areas. We don't have any problem with that, Your Honor.
Stand corrected, Attorney. I think you better explained it much more precisely. However, the area itself might not have any complication, but the creation of that authority, we might run some complications. But again, we will leave that to the best discretion of the Secretary. Right, DOF? Alam ko na ho yung sagot nyo, but let's put it on record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned by the Honorable Chair, the DOF position, as regard to the proposed bill, mainly we have two concerns. First, in general, the DOF is consistent with the position that any creation of an economic zone with the existing framework, which is the under RA 7916 or the PESA law, should any creation of an economic zone should be under that existing framework, which is the PESA law. As already manifested by our resource person from PESA, Mr. Cortero and Attorney Brillantes. Specifically, we would like to raise concern on the proposed economic zone or the special defense economic zone, because the main objective, as mentioned by our resource speakers or persons from the DND, AFP, and PNP that the main objective is for self-reliant or self-sufficiency of the requirements, the defense equipment requirements or needs. The proposal is to convert the government arsenal into an economic zone. So basically, it's considered as domestic economic zone because the main production is to be sold to the AFP and the PNP. They are consistent that we do not see any compelling economic reason for putting up a domestic economic zone with tax incentives. An economic zone is an enclave for industries with tax incentives, so they have different tax treatment. First is special economic zones are put up to for competitiveness. So mainly for exports. The activity is mainly for exports to have competitiveness. As proposed, the main activity of the economic zone being proposed is to supply the needs of AFP and PNP, which more or less 100% of the production of JA is being supplied right now under the existing system. So that's our number one concern. That's why we do not support as proposed. Number two is on the proposed tax incentives package. As mentioned in the preliminary statement of the good chairman, that we have pending tax reform under package 2, which covers the corporate income tax reform and the modernization of the fiscal incentive system. One of the incentives being reformed or being repealed under the existing law is the 5% on gross income earned, which all of the charters of the investment promotion agencies right now, we have 14 IPAs right now that grants the 5% on GIE, which is in lieu of all national and local taxes. And the 5% on GIE is being shared or distributed from the national government and the local government, because this is in lieu of all the national and local taxes. So this is one of the incentives, or tax incentives under the present system, which is being repealed, because for tax policy, we do not, we are repealing all special laws that has that phrase in lieu of all national and local taxes. We also do not commit local taxes because of its provision under the local government code of its autonomy. They have autonomy in fiscal policy. So I understand that almost all of our resource persons from particularly AFP and PNP, that they are, and also JA, that they are proposing an amendment as regard to the sharing. So this runs counter with our tax reform package 2 right now, which is being heard in the lower house. So mainly, sir, that's our main issue or concern as regard to the proposed bill. And we will also submit our written position, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, yeah, just a few comments. First, na-mention ng DOF na it will be a domestic economic zone. Actually, it was stated in the first few provisions that the government arsenal will remain independent. So what we are converting is the area outside the current 70 hectares of the government arsenal as the economic zone. No, so yun po, so hindi ho magagalaw yung existing operations ng government arsenal. Ang kino-convert ho natin is the area outside the 70 hectares currently used up by the government arsenal as an economic zone. Secondly, I think it's very clear that we need foreign investors or locators to come in, especially when it comes to technology transfer. No, so kung aasa lang tayo sa existing local technology natin, baka hindi natin ma-achieve yung ating objective na talagang maging self-reliant, no, ang ating pong armed forces. In fact, that's why we're inviting all these locators para, number one, pumasok sila, matuto tayo, kumita sila, but at the same time, we will be able to develop our own local industries kasi natuto tayo sa kanila. No? So, mahalaga po yun pagdating sa developing a self-reliant armed forces. Number three, I think sa mga batas natin ngayon, especially even with the PEZA law, economic zones are not anymore just export-oriented. No, we understand, BOI, PEZA understands how important the local market is. And in fact, I know that PEZA is also pushing na mais no yung regulation pagdating sa selling in the domestic market kasi we want our manufacturers to grow here in our country. So hindi na ho, when we say economic zone now, hindi ho yung dating export processing zone as we know it before. No? Ngayon, economic zone na lang, hindi na siya export processing zone dahil nga both local market and for export ang ginagawa niya. And then number 4, yung when it comes to yung rationalization of incentives, I think we can all agree that the different it's not a level playing field. No? So iba po yung PEZA, iba yung sitwasyon sa bawat IPA, no, iba sa Bataan, iba ho sa CEZA, iba sa Aurora. So we cannot rationalize the incentives kasi kunyari, sino ho pupunta sa Bataan kung pare-pareho lang po yung incentives natin. So lahat syempre sa PEZA na lang, BOI, that can locate anywhere. No? So the reason why we're putting additional incentives or higher incentives, bigger incentives in some IPAs, kasi nga hindi ho level yung playing field, and we need these incentives to be able to bring in locators. And then finally, Mr. Chair, ito nga rin yung gusto ho namin sana maintindihan ng DOF. Sana come up with a study, no? Why rationalize? I suppose ang initial assumption po dyan, Mr. Chair, is sayang yung incentives na binibigay natin. Anyway, dadating naman yung mga locators na yan, they'll locate here with or without the incentives. So that's why we're trying to put a uniform. But we all know, given the global economy now, ang dami hong mga bansa, lamang na lamang sa atin pagdating sa incentives. No, that's why we're not as competitive, especially here in Southeast Asia, especially with our neighboring countries. And siguro banggitin ko na rin, lalo-lalo nandito naman ang DOF, just to show, ito po yung kaninang nabanggit ko na cost-benefit analysis na ginawa po ng Authority of the Freeport Area of Bataan. So pagdating sa cost, no, sa cost po muna tayo, yung VAT, excise tax and duty exemption, so umabot po sa 10.3 billion. Yung foregone income tax, umabot sa 1.6 billion. Yung VAT zero rated, umabot sa 857 million. And then yung budget allocation from GAA, umabot ho sa 750 million. So this is 2010, Mr. Chair, to 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So yung total cost to the government, including foregone taxes, totals 13.58 billion. Pero yung benefit, so government spending, specifically AFAB capital expenditures from internally generated funds, it's already 864 million. Consumption, no, yung salaries po ng mga 40,000 na nagtatrabaho sa Freeport Area of Bataan, is 15.9 billion. Investment from locators is 27.8 billion. Net exports, so export minus import, is 42.9 billion. So yung benefit is 87.6 billion if you compare it to the cost of only 13.58 billion. Lumalabas nga yung benefit cost ratio is 6.45 pesos. No? 1 peso spent by the government, ang bumabalik po sa atin is 6 pesos 45 centavos. No? So, Mr. Chair, I think very clear na malaki ho yung benefits ng mga special economic zones. Ito po mga direct investors, not only in terms of employment, but how it complements the economy, the local economy of places where these economic zones are located. And then lastly, Mr. Chair, just to add, yung presence of the Freeport area of Bataan is the main reason why Bataan now is declared as having the lowest poverty incidence at 2%. No, so, noong 2012, Mr. Chair, ang poverty incidence ng Bataan is 7%. Ngayon pong 2015, bumaba po siya to 2%. No, so, and kung titingnan ho natin yung na-generate na jobs ng Freeport area of Bataan, is more or less, yun po yung jobs na nabigay sa mga mahihirap na taga-Bataan, kaya ho bumaba to 2% yung aming poverty incidence. Sa huli naman, that's why we're trying to generate revenues, build program, is so that we can provide opportunities, livelihood for our people. Pero kung ito, malino na through the economic zone, nakapagbigay tayo ng trabaho at bumaba to as a certain level yung poverty incidence, I think it's something that DOF should support moving forward. And just to mention also, Mr. Chair, when Congress wanted to separate Bataan from PEZA, syempre, yung position ng DOF then at that time was not to separate it since nandiyan na sila sa PEZA. So imagine kung hindi po na-separate yung Freeport area of Bataan from PEZA, we won't be able to generate this much. And the poverty incidence of Bataan might not be as low as it is now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As regard to the creation of the Special Defense Economic Zone under Section 3, it is provided here that the whole 370 hectares are being declared or created under as the Special Defense Economic Zone, including the the government arsenal. If I may be clarified, as mentioned by our Honorable Congressman Garcia, that only 70 hectares are being created, and 300 out, excluding the government arsenal.
Actually, Mr. Chair, ang lumalabas po dyan, ma'am, is the whole 370 will be special economic zone, pero yung 70 na right now ino-occupy ng government arsenal, nakalagay rin po dito that the operations of the GA shall remain independent of the management of the SPEDES and the Special Defense Economic Zone. They shall not interfere with activities conducted in the 70-hectare area on which the GA is situated. But kaya ho natin kino-convert lahat kasi the GA can also partner with potential locators, investors for the development of the government arsenal.
Okay, thank you, sir. If I may, Mr. Chair, on the tax incentives, I've mentioned only on the 5% GIE, but under the Package 2 Tax Reform bill, we have a menu of tax incentives, and one of the tax incentives under the menu is there's an incentive for an enterprise or an existing enterprise in Metro Manila, for example, to locate outside Metro Manila. There's an incentives for that to disperse economic activity in the in Metro Manila, for example. So there's tax incentives provided in the menu under that package 2 bill. Also as like what PESA had mentioned, that the defense industry may be also present in the other part of the country, not only in Bataan. If I may also, in Bataan right now, there are existing 6 economic zones only in Bataan. There are 5 under PESA. One is the AFAB, or the Authority Freeport Area of Bataan, and 1 under the BCDA law. So all in all, there are 6 economic zones already existing or operating in the province of Bataan. Also, if I may, Mr. Chair, as regard to the economic zones are being proposed, which I have mentioned earlier, that it may be considered as domestic, because the requirements or the needs of the AFP and the PNP is one of the objectives to address the requirements. So, since the creation of economic zones is with tax incentives, if the main objective is to address the self-sufficiency and self-reliance of AFP as to the requirements or to the defense requirements, maybe it's not through the government assistance or intervention, maybe not through tax incentives, maybe through the budget, to address the concern or the issue right now being faced by the AFP or the PNP as regard to the requirements of small arms and ammunitions. Because if we give as a government intervention to we are talking of government here. So it is always the position of the DOF that we do not we are consistent that the government intervention for example, for this defense industry, particularly with the concern of the AFP and the PNP, maybe it's through the budget, not through the revenue system or the tax incentive system. First is it's hard to monitor if we give tax incentives to the locators or to the partners of the GA in this case. So if it's through the budget, it's very transparent. So when it comes to transparency of the government assistance, we are on the position that it should be through the budget. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Kung Joet, do you have any? Well, as a final word to DOF, mag-usap na lang ho silang ni Secretary Dominguez and ni Secretary Lorenzana. I think that will be the best case. No, if the two secretaries can somehow meet and talk about this proposed measure. Next is NEDA. Wala yung NEDA, no? I think they went to ano muna. BSP, do you have any comments, BSP?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We promised to submit our official comments at the soonest, Mr. Chairman. But what we have here are initial comments on the bill. In general, Mr. Chairman, Our position is that in the pursuit of our mandate, such as in promoting price and financial stability, the BSP remains firm in its support for the government's commitment to structural reforms to further attract investments. Moreover, Mr. Chairman, the BSP supports these efforts towards enhancing the country's overall investment environment, as this will have far-reaching implications in enhancing competitiveness in a national scale. The BSP notes that the establishment of special economic zones such as this may be an opportunity to spur economic activity, thereby promoting economic dynamism in several areas of the country and in improving the overall business climate of the country. For its part, Mr. Chairman, the BSP's commitment to improve the overall business climate is manifested through our policy initiatives, such as pursuing effective monetary policy, liberalizing foreign exchange regulatory regimes, such as in exports and imports, and supporting capital market environment that is related to the intention of this House bill, Mr. Chairman. So that's...
Thank you. Please submit to us your position paper later on.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Next is Neda, if you're, ma'am.
Good morning. With regards to the proposed bill, NEDA remains its position with regards to the establishing eco-zones to be funded under the government budget. Sorry, I just have to catch my breath. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, NADA is always supportive of the establishment of eco-zones through the framework of PESA. But the Philippine Development Plan actually supports the development of defense industry, but not through the establishment of the eco-zones. Instead, through by supporting local defense industry. This is through by coming up with comprehensive policies that will address the issues as mentioned by our local manufacturers in terms of raw material supply, issues on procurement, and even the regulation of our local manufacturers. Okay. Sorry po talaga. Tumakbo po kasi ako. Okay. Ayun. So, we actually, given that this is a specialized eco-zone, which tackles actually defense and security, and not just like any other eco-zones. Like, for example, we have the public eco-zones under PESA, the Cavite, in Bataan also. This actually are engaged in manufacturing of goods which have a sustainable market demand. But for this defense eco-zone, we have heard particularly the point of view of our local manufacturer, the Arms Corps, which would actually entail or has many challenges in terms of sustainability with the limited demand for market demand for defense with goods procured and within the eco-zone, such as for defense and yung mga ammunitions natin. We are also fully supportive, lalo na dun sa modernization of our government arsenal. But with this, specifically for this bill, we actually object to the inclusion of the government arsenal within the jurisdiction or authority of the development authority. Nakatawa si sir. We retain our position that the government arsenal should be within the jurisdiction and of the national government. The Development Authority will take up a new, will be a new entity, a corporate entity, which we believe that government arsenal should be fully independent, even with the policies to be imposed by the Development Authority. Yun nga po kanina, sir, we would like also to be clarified because reading the Section 3 of the bill, it explicitly says that it will include government arsenal, although there are certain statements that say that it will remain independent, but for purpose of clarity, we would like to recommend that the bill should clarify explicitly sasama ba ang government arsenal in terms of yung jurisdiction? Will they be part of the SPEDESA or not? Making that explicit will be also necessary para alam natin yung delineation of authorities when it comes to the government arsenal. We would also like to, we actually would have some specific comments in the proposed bill. Then, initially, we would like to recommend that the bill should define specifically the metes and bounds of the territory, not just, and in terms of yung provision that says that the government arsenal will ay hindi pwedeng mag-expand. And ano yun, because this will actually put in prejudice, especially dun sa future developments ng government arsenal. Kung sakali nga na hindi siya dapat kasali dun sa buong authority. There's also those, as mentioned by DFA kanina, the authority of the SPEDESA to enter into foreign economic relations, economic defense relations would actually be, would necessitate clearance, not only guidance from the DFA, but also, actually, this will impact, yun nga, dun sa mga bilateral, existing bilateral and policies natin with other countries. So, actually, mas medyo ano yung proposal namin is that it should go through the process, approval process of any, such as any other, the usual process of one country engaging into economic defense relations or cooperation. Again, going back dun sa expansion, the function, the bill actually indicates that the SPEDESA has the authority to expand, procure or increase, procure or expand the area, which we believe is the power of the Congress. It should be through a congressional amendment and just by the proclamation of, or simply a proclamation of the authority. Additional comment, sir, is very specific on Section 6 in terms of the powers of and functions of SPEDESA. It's on item B. It says there on powers to exercise the power of eminent domain for public use and public purposes. We believe that this power only belongs to the President as provided by Section 12, Chapter 4 of Executive Order 292 or the Administrative Code of 1997. The said section says that the President shall determine when it's necessary or advantageous to exercise the power of eminent domain in behalf of the national government. And it should not be given not to any other government or any authority such as a corporate in nature. NEDA will be sending you, sir, our official position with other additional comments.
Thank you, Ms. Araneta. You mentioned earlier that the promotion of the defense industry is part of the Philippine Development Plan.
Yes, sir.
Meron na ho kayong industry analysis of the defense industry?
Supposedly, sir, the DTI with the ND shall be formulating our industry roadmap for the local defense industry.
Meron na ba ngayon?
I don't have any updates, sir, ngayon. We will be getting updates from the concerned agencies.
But it's already undertaken. It's already, there's a study.
Hopefully, sir, because it forms part of the priority it is actually indicated as priority strategies in the PDP.
I mean, you cannot put it under the PDP without
yes, sir.
detailed industry analysis.
We would just like to note, sir, for example, that's why we're emphasizing here the support to local industries, local manufacturers. We would just like to note the statements of from our resource person from Armscor that in fact they are producing 200 million rounds, which is 10 times more than what is being imported as required by our AFP. And so looking at that capability of, it's just one manufacturer. When imagine if we could develop and support in terms of policy, in terms of any other support, to our local manufacturers, then maybe we could imagine that their production could be more than enough to support our requirements, not just on small ammunitions, but maybe because in the PDP we are also supporting the research and development, even for the defense industry. So there is a lot that the government, through policy reforms, policy support, and even additional budgetary support, that doesn't actually need us to establish a defense ecozone. We would also like to note in terms or emphasize the issue raised by Ms. Gina of Armscor on the sustainability in terms of market demand, especially if we attract foreign investors which will be competing with, of course, our local manufacturers. In fact, baka eventually, yung sinasabi natin nga kaninang mga challenges ay baka hindi na rin makahabol ang ating local manufacturers, and it will give due advantage now to the foreign investors. In terms of procurement issues, nakikita po namin yung isang policy support dito that the national government can do was in terms of I think there's a proposed Defense Acquisition Act which will give exemptions in terms of yung acquisition or procurement ng ating mga defense and security for defense and security purposes. So I think DND is drafting a proposal on that, and those mentioned by Ms. Gina of Armscor kanina na mga problema natin sa procurement, it may not be addressed by the general procurement law, but maybe through a defense acquisition law.
Thank you. Please furnish us that defense industry analysis. I would assume that, bago mo sagutin, is the defense industry a viable industry for the Philippines to promote?
Well, definitely, sir, given that Armscor is still here for like more than 50 years. But of course, nasabi nga natin, because as a private sector, they were able to engage into so many other areas. They go into...
But we want 100 plus Armscors. We don't want one Armscor. We want...
Well, sir, if it's yun na sasabi natin, madami kasing challenges in terms of policies na inimpose natin, diba, sa procurement pa lang,
but
mga
it's a viable industry for the country. That's
Well,
one
for us,
indus-
sir, yes, sir, we see it viable. Pero yung sasabi natin, we support it especially in the development of our raw materials. Malaking bagay po yun. Kasi kung hindi nga ito masuportahan at that level, even kahit mayroon pa tayong defense ecozone, kung ang local raw materials naman ay manggagaling pa rin sa
That's
iba.
why I'm asking you, based on your industry analysis, is it a viable industry?
Sir, I didn't say that there is already. I'm not sure right now because we're not handling that sector on using all those industry analysis. But we will be getting information from our trade and services sector staff on that matter. Kung meron na pong ganong industry analysis on defense. But in the PDP, I'm not sure if it's the DTI who provided, I think it's the DTI who provided them that input in terms of the formulation of a roadmap for defense industry, local defense industry.
All right.
So
Just furnish us na lang, no?
Yes, sir. We will give you the copy.
Thank you. BIR, is our next, ano ba tang BIR? Is there anyone from BIR here? Wala. GCG, Attorney?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. First off, we'd like to thank the Honorable Committee for inviting us here. And we'd like to manifest our support to the balancing of the national interests of an improved SRDP and, of course, fiduciary responsibility or improved economic development. I'm just going to make 3 points, and we will be submitting our formal comments to the committee. First, on the nature of the proposed PDESA as a GOCC. Technically, by definition, this PDESA, based on our study, would technically be a GOCC. But under RA 10149, or the GOCC Governance Act of 2011, EZAs are actually exempt from the regulatory functions of the GCG, or the Governance Commission for GOCCs. The only exercise of state ownership that the state will have over the SPEDESA or any EZA would be on the nomination or the appointment of 1/3 of the appointive directors of the board of SPEDESA. Next, we'd like to comment on certain governance policies that we'd like the committee possibly to consider. First, with regards to the separation of the CEO and the chairmanship of the board, which the Honorable Chair has already mentioned earlier. This is exactly a good governance or a best practice even for state-owned enterprises or GOCCs. It does, from our observation in the past few years that the GCG has been in place, a separate CEO or administrator and chairmanship promotes a balancing of power and also promotes accountability of the management to the board of directors. Next is on the composition of the proposed board of directors. We note that there seems to be a lot of ex officio membership that is proposed to be to compose the board of the SPEDESA. For the past few years that GCG has been in place, we've observed that this may not exactly be the best practice for our GOCCs. We've observed that having a lot of ex officio board members, these ex officio members are usually from offices of the departments or secretaries, cannot fully perform their functions as a board member because of the sheer magnitude of their duties. We do recommend, though, that there are more industry experts that would be members of the board. For example, urban planners, since it is going to be an economic zone authority, leaders of industry, some people from finance, business, of course, from the defense industry. Lastly, we'd like to, of course, we're sure the committee already knows, but we just like to remind everyone that we note that there are memberships in the proposed board that would come from the affected municipalities. We have always hazarded to remind committees that there is a constitutional prohibition on the appointment of elective officials. So we just want to remind the committee about that. Lastly, we'd like to point out the GCG is well aware about the competition policy of the state that is being that is being now actually, composed by jointly by the NEDA, the Philippine Competition Commission, the GCG, the DOF, and the like. We'd like to state for the record that the GCG advocates competitive neutrality, which means that while we do understand that there are, that the government is, kumbaga, streamlining or rationalizing the incentives for the different industries, we do understand that there are certain industries, like specifically the defense industry or national defense interests, that would require some kind of advantage so as to promote the industry or to promote that specific national interest. And with that, we would propose to the committee that maybe the comments of the Philippine Competition Commission would also be requested. With that, Mr. Chair, we will be submitting our formal comments later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney. And since you mentioned, wala pala dito. We don't have the Philippine Competition Commission. However, we have the PPP Center. So, I'd like to hear from the PPP Center.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The PPP Center has submitted their comments to the committee, but I will enunciate quickly the gist of our submission today. With regard to the provision of infrastructure and services and public utilities in the proposed economic zone, we find that the bill does not conflict with the existing policy framework governing the country's PPP program. We just have 2 points regarding the PPP procurement of infrastructure, either through the BOT law modes or joint ventures, which is also covered under the umbrella of public-private partnerships. First, we'd like to clarify the operationalization of the priority in the awarding of contracts to registered enterprises. This is vis-a-vis the principle of competitiveness in public bidding, be it under the traditional procurement or the PPP procurement. So we'd like to suggest a provision which is contained in our comment on the bill for the committee's consideration. So rather than a straightforward and unqualified priority in the awarding of contracts to registered enterprises, we'd like to suggest that the registered bidder should have submitted an equally advantageous bid with exactly the same price and technical specifications, so as not to trump the principle of competitiveness in public bidding. And secondly, and our last comment would be to expand the scheme available to the Economic Zone Authority in case the BOT law is determined to be the best mode of procurement of the infrastructure. So we should not limit the authority to the BOT scheme, but rather we should be open to other contractual arrangements as defined under the BOT law or as may be approved by the President. So these are the BTO, BT structures, which are also available by law. This presupposes, of course, that the Economic Zone Authority has determined and studied that it is BOT law or JV that is the best structure to pursue these projects. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney. Next will be the Bureau of Immigration. Attorney Henry.
Thank you, sir. Very lucky po ako dahil nandito po yung dati kong boss sa Bureau of Immigration, si Commissioner David, now a USEC of the Department of National Defense. Baka ano sabihin ko dito, makorek na kaagad, sir. Sir, ang concern po ng Bureau of Immigration dito ay covered under Section 12. Konting suggestions lang po tungkol sa visa. Yung investor's visa po ay meron na tayong ini-implement ng Board of Investment na ang required investment lang ay $75,000 ang requirement po ng BOI. Kung pwedeng i-reduce siguro ito to conform to that requirement of the BOI. Then, sa authority to issue visas and work permits, i-include po natin ang Department of Justice who accepts and process issuance of 47A2 visas, that is the visa being implemented or required under the PESA law. So, sir, sa section 12, number 12, the authority to issue visas and work permits shall remain with the Bureau of Immigration, Department of Labor, and Employment, respectively. I-include po ang Department of Justice with respect. Then, kung merong caveat po, I just don't know how the committee will insert that the visa issued under this should be exclusive within SPDESA. Kasi po may experience ang Bureau of Immigration, nakakahuli ng mga nagtatrabaho sa Makati, it appears na mayroon silang CESA visa issued in Cagayan. Pero na-stop na po yan. So kung meron lang caveat dito, how the committee will word it, may specific na po. Ayun lang po ang...
Attorney, pwede ba yun to, for example, when you issue a visa for a particular ecozone, he is confined within that ecozone? Is that, pwede ba ho yun?
Dapat po, sir.
Pwede mangyari yun?
Yes,
no?
sir.
So, for example, in this case, within itong Special Defense Economic Zone, nandun lang siya?
Yes, sir. Dapat. Okay. Kung magtatrabaho outside of the economic zone, may violation na po ng...
For example, kung kailangan niya lumabas for some whatever reason.
Hindi naman yung hindi siya makakalabas, sir.
Hindi lang siya pwede magtrabaho.
Oo.
Hindi siya pwede magtrabaho sa ibang lugar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Doon sa minention nyo sa particular, yung CESA, it was issued in CESA pero nagtatrabaho sa ibang lugar.
Oh,
and that is illegal.
Yes, sir.
Dito sa itong ano natin, itong bill natin, for example, is it issued for a particular company? For example, we will have several locators here. For example, Armscor. Pero pwede ba siya magtrabaho sa ibang corporation pero nasa loob nito? Or is it a particular company also? Okay. And that's in your rules, no? Okay. Sige po. All right, thank you. Nasa Dolly. All right. And with that, we would like to ask Dolly also for their opinion.
Sige, magandang hapon po sa inyo. We support this particular measure, sir, for two reasons. Number one is because the creation of a defense ecozone would certainly allow the creation of jobs, and not just jobs, but quality jobs. This is one of the advocacies of the DOLE now, is to be able to create jobs that will spur technical, professional, and specialized kind of work for Filipinos. We also look forward to job creation in that particular place where the ecozone will be located, no? For preferential, yung parang they'd be given more preference in terms of recruitment and selection. Secondly, we also find that PEZAs, economic zones or special economic zones, are easier to manage in terms of enforcement and implementation of labor laws under the Philippine Labor Code as amended. This is an experience and a good practice that we observe over the years, especially through our Labor Inspectorate program. But despite this, because of the invigorated and revitalized inspection program of the DOLE of late. We have come up with findings of violations also coming from ecozones, and this is the reason why just last January of this year, the Secretary Bebot Bello, through the instruction of the President, also has revoked a 2006 Memorandum of Agreement with PEZA delegating or relegating the enforcement and monitoring powers of the Department of Labor through our Article 128 inspectorate and visitorial powers. So we have gotten it back. Also, this is one of the reasons, sir, why under section, is it section 10 or section 11? Maybe section 11, proposing a special labor center. Our request here is this particular center is okay, kasi this will allow us to not only monitor, enforce, implement all the labor laws, particularly on occupational safety and health standards. We know that defense material, ammunitions would necessarily entail explosives, toxic materials, and other vulnerable materials that would necessarily or unnecessarily expose our Filipino workers. Thus, we look forward to the creation of this that will come up with personnel on health, inspection, safety and health, inspection, occupational safety, and meron din dito mga programs on dispute settlement, etc. We hope that, and we will probably definitely request that this labor center be under the jurisdiction and administration of the DOLE. So we can have, again, two modalities. Either we have dedicated people to be manning this from plantilla positions that should be created by the DBM, because right now our inspectorate program has very limited manpower. We only have 600 people to be taking care of close to 1 million establishments, and we can't just assign, let's say, plantilla from Region 3 or some other proximate DOLE offices. Therefore, we will request DOLE to come up with new plantilla positions to take care of this particular recommendation. As the gentleman from the Bureau of Immigration mentioned, we will ensure that our mandate relative to the issuance of the AEP, the Alien Employment Permit, is something that is observed and facilitated and expeditiously done to support the Special Economic Zone as proposed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ASEC. And BOC, Bureau of Customs, Attorney.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and everyone. Of course, we could not go against the position of our mother agency, the Department of Finance. Anyway, insofar as the proposed measure considers the special defense economic zone as a separate customs territory, and is therefore assured of free flow of goods and products. The Bureau of Customs would not interpose any objection to that provision. As a matter of fact, the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, or RA 10863, recognizes the establishment of these free zones, and of course subject to certain provisions like the imposition of taxes, customs duties and taxes on products removed from the territory of the free zone, and also the requirement of goods declaration if there is an admission or transit of goods from foreign countries, and also the continuous coordination between the Bureau of Customs authorities and the free zones authorities. And a perusal of the provisions of the proposed measure, we see that these concerns are already incorporated in the proposed bill. Anyway, the Bureau of Customs will be submitting, sir, our written comment on the bill, on the proposed bill.
Thank you, Attorney. Attorney, just again, for the information of everyone, so that everyone will be on the same page. Kanina, na-mention ng DOF, part of the goal is really to supply our local requirements or local necessities. No, the DND through the AFP through DND and the PNP is in need of a lot of ammunition and defense equipment. Ngayon, the goal here is to attract locators like ArmScore to set up, no, to take advantage of the incentives, both in terms of fiscal incentives, and the other one is in terms of importation of capital goods and their other requirements. Ngayon, when they import and they export the goods, wala silang babayaran na duties and tariffs as well as VAT, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, for example, ArmScore will set up, and they said 80% of their output is export. So, ibig sabihin, when they set up inside, they import materials, the export, basically wala silang babayaran import duties as well as VAT, correct po?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When they start selling to AFP, they're inside the zone and they start selling to AFP, what is now the process? Because they have to take out their goods outside of the zone to sell to the AFP.
Well, ang setup po kasi, sir, pagka government importation, ang treatment ay tax-free siya. Tax-free ang government importation. Then, if that is the case, then...
free in whatever port, no? Pero in this case, it's, let's take ArmScore as an example, no? ArmScore is importing, let's say nga, gunpowder, no, the equipment necessary to produce bullets or ammunition, and now they start selling to the armed forces. So they import the gunpowder and other materials, I would assume, tax-free. They assemble it, now they sell it to the AFP. What happens in that process? No? Na sila ng taxes.
I think, sir, I'm not sure, but pag free port zone, if the product, the raw materials, for instance, or the components are imported, it will be tax-free. Then it will be imposed tax if it will be removed from the zone and sold to domestic market or exported. I mean, it will be sold to domestic market. Sa ganyang instance po, the other part of the government, kasi parang exportation na siya eh. I mean, importation ng PNP or AFP, it will remain as freely importable items, tax-free. Maybe, I'm not really sure. But sa yung locator, maybe they will be imposed tax with respect to the importation of the components.
In other words, if ArmScore is inside the zone and starts selling to AFP, they will be charged with duties and taxes because they're bringing out the
value-added tax.
Value-added tax for the sale, and then for the importation of materials, they will be imposed duties and taxes. Correct? Kasi ibebenta niya na sa AFP eh, no? So anyone can elaborate. So that everyone will understand the process, no? Kanina you opened that up. You can elaborate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the tax and duty-free importation of raw materials that form part of the product or the produced product, and then sold to DND or AFP in this case, for example, Armscor, yung the locator and then the manufacturer and then the seller to DND, the sale to DND will be subject to VAT. But the duty portion will be paid by Armscor. Under the existing, attorney, please correct me if I'm wrong. Under the existing system, like for example, for PESA, the locator of PESA, once they import raw materials, tax and duty free. Then once they sell to local or to the domestic market, that's subject to tax and duty. So the locator should pay tax and duty to customs. Then the buyer, kasi it is deemed since separate customs territory, parang it is considered as importation ng local market or from the customs territory from the zone. So subject to tax and duty by the locator. So they have to pay. In this case, Armscor should pay tax and duty on the exempt component.
And when you pay tax and duty, that is passed on to the consumer.
Yes.
Correct?
Okay, sir.
Of course, that's part of their cost.
Under the existing system right now, the VAT and duty is being paid by the locator to customs. The seller, the buyer, there's no, they're not paying the VAT and duty on the import, on the product or the product being sold, because the VAT component on the product, because I understand the VAT is based on the product, not on the raw materials.
Yes, but that
used
forms
to
part of the cost structure of the product. Correct? It
Yes, sir.
adds on the cost structure. So my question is, anong price advantage ng gobyerno dito sa economic zone, sa defense economic zone?
Wala lang po, sir, ng duty.
Walang duty?
Walang duty, but I think
Hindi, but domestic...
but the locator or the seller, it will form part of the selling price, the duty, because hindi siya pass on tax eh. Unlike VAT, it's being a pass on tax. So it's part of the cost. Nandun na po yan sa cost. I-add yun kasi nagbayad siya eh. So i-add
So walang price advantage nga for the government?
Wala po. Kasi
It's not
parang
as if government can say, I'm government, so waive nyo yung VAT, waive nyo yung tariffs and duties. Pwede bang ganon?
Actually, sir, pag yung...
Pag sila bumili ng bala, walang import duties and VAT. Correct?
Actually, sir, hindi siya po exempt.
Exempted ng gobyerno
Hindi
from...
po, yung importation ng government, hindi po exempt.
Hindi ba exempt
Nasa
sila?
budget po yun ng agency. Meron tayong tinatawag na tax expenditure fund from the DBM. Kung national government agency po yung importer. Pag government corporation naman po yung importer, nandun din yun sa tax expenditure fund, but under the general automatic appropriation po yun. Whereas yung importation, yung tax liability on importation of the national government agencies, nasa budget po nila. So, nasa ano po yun, kasama po yun pag nagpo-propose tayo ng budget.
Right. Kaya nga, anong pricing advantage ng gobyerno from buying from locators inside the zone? Anong
Actually, sir,
pricing
the same.
advantage?
Wala po. The same lang po din, sir. May component din po ng tax.
So, ganun rin?
Yes, sir.
In fact, baka mas mura pa nga mag-import. Kasi magbabayad rin sila ng duties and VAT. Correct? General.
Your Honor, I've been listening for the past half hour. We are dealing on the economic side of the SPEDS. We in the armed forces, we see these proposed SPEDS having two main sides, the economic and the security side. And in our humble point of view, the security side should be above the economic and all other sides of this SPEDS proposed bill. We talked earlier about the country not being able to have its ammunition because all of the raw materials are imported, even Arms Corps, GA. But with these SPEDS, we now have the opportunity to entice manufacturers of gunpowder, manufacturers of the cartridges, to locate at the SPEDS, and then they already have a customer, government arsenal, which produces ammunitions yearly, at least 40 million annually of small arms ammunition. We talked earlier that in case of war, there are many dimensions to it, the economic, diplomatic, military dimension. In the diplomatic side, if we say we are at war with one country, this country can exert diplomatic influence over our suppliers of gunpowder, of cartridges. They can even do naval blockades of ships transporting our raw materials. But if the locators or the manufacturers of these components, ammunition is already at SPEDS, is already at Bataan, producing gunpowder for GA, and also locator of cartridges manufacturer, sourcing minerals from the country instead of exporting it and exporting it to us. We all have this, all of these manufacturers in these SPEDS, complete line. So the country is assured of our ammunition. So notwithstanding all the economic gains or maybe losses, but on the security side, we have so much to gain. If during wartime, we may have guns, but if we do not have ammunition, these guns are just pieces of metal. And at war, your soldiers are willing to fight, but give us that fighting chance. Assure us that the ammunition will be there and your soldiers will be there also. So, in short, there may be, or in summary, there may be gains and losses on the economic and financial side. But let us make this as secondary to the SPEDS. Let us look at the security side. This SPED will give to our country, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, General. And like I mentioned before, no, at the end of the day, if you take out the legal jargon of this bill, it's really about the soldier. No? It's really about giving our soldier the proper support equipment to make sure that the country is always secure, stable, and peaceful. No? That's why kami ho ni Congressman Garcia, we found merit in putting this piece together and making sure that we maximize the full potential, not only economically, no, but also the potential of being self-reliant. No? And lastly, from CAAP.
So good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so as regards the airport operations, Mr. Chair, the location of the Special Defense Economic Zone is within the 3 nautical miles restricted area due to the existence of the oil refinery on its right side. So therefore, it is under RPR number 76 or Republic of the Philippines Restricted Area number 76. So what is this all about? It restricts an aircraft from flying below 6,000 feet. Therefore, when an aircraft passes through the said airspace, it should be 6,000 feet and above. So as regards the operation itself, maybe small aircraft can operate in the area given the proximity of a terrain or Mount Samat on its left side, and also given the nearness of the oil refinery on its right side, or PNOC, there should be an assessment or risk assessment made first before we can finally say that an airport is feasible. Because, of course, as regards regarding aviation, sir, safety is our main concern. So that's just all about it, sir. Also, mentioning, just like what I've mentioned earlier regarding this obstruction, so we have man-made obstructions, which is the oil refinery, and also natural obstruction, which is Mount Samat on its left side. Therefore, we really suggest that an assessment should first be made. And we should also consider the flight path, Your Honor, because it may somehow affect other airstrips located in the area, like the Corregidor airstrip, the proposed Sangli airstrip, the Manila Bay airstrip, and also that of Bulacan. So these are the things that we have to consider if we are proposing an airport operation in the said vicinity, sir.
No, gagawa nung
You will coordinate with CAAP, sir.
But are you going to undertake those studies or the proponent?
I think the civil aviation, sir. Yes, we are in
Civil-
charge of that, sir.
So kayo na, for this purpose, you will...
Yes, sir. You just
Why
have to
don't you do
coordinate
a
it with us.
preliminary tabletop analysis first, no?
Okay.
It's because we're still deliberating the bill,
Okay.
and as we I think move forward or even go deeper, then we can do a deeper analysis. But a tabletop analysis will do, at least for now.
Okay. Sir, in addition to that, we also have to know the area itself, on what kind of airport will be operating, if it's logistics.
Wala yatang airport tong... Well, it's too small, no? It's 370
Yes, sir,
hectares.
but
So
it's on page 10, number 21.
page...
Line number 21, sir. Airport operations in coordination with the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines
Oo nga.
and the AFP.
Ano bang minimum land area to build a runway? Ano, 300 is small.
Yes, sir. It's a bit small.
Well, we can remove this if it's not applicable to this project, no? Unless the AFP has some idea on building a airstrip in this area, General Kasbar.
Maybe helicopter, sir, but for fixed-wing aircraft, too much earth movement dahil very hilly yung terrain.
Then we can remove siguro yung
Maybe, sir, yes.
mention of an airport or airstrip or air operation, but helicopters for sure. No, helicopter is much it's less stringent, no?
Yes,
I
sir.
would assume. Okay. Sige. Any last words from the resource persons before we
Malaking kakainin.
move on? Kong Joet, any last words po?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to manifest some amendments to this bill. First, even after we pass this bill in the lower house, there were already suggestions on with regards to its name, because the name specifically states defense zone. Ang comment, Mr. Chair, ng marami, pag sinabi mong defense zone, it could be misinterpreted as a military establishment, military area. No, so baka raw pagdating sa security, maging target siya for especially if ever magkakaroon po ng gera. No, so many suggested that we change the name. We did a focus group discussion, and then this is the name that came up, and I'd like to propose it, of course, depending on the wisdom of the committee. So from Special Defense Economic Zone, it will be known as the Advanced Security Technologies Park. No, so from the Special Defense Economic Zone, it will be known as the Advanced Security Technologies Park. Then the name of the authority, from Special Defense Economic Zone Authority, it will now be known as the Advanced Security Technologies Park Authority. So with the change in name, Mr. Chair, there will be a change in the title. So the title now will be read as an act establishing a special economic zone called the Advanced Security Technologies Park inside the Government Arsenal Defense Industrial Estate located in Camp General Antonio Luna, Lamao, Municipality of Limay, Province of Bataan, creating for this purpose the Advanced Security Technologies Park Authority and appropriating funds therefore. Aside from the title, of course, Section 1, which is the short title, will be changed to this act shall be known as the Advanced Security Technologies Park Act of 2017. Then from Section 3 all the way to the last section, to replace the old name with the new name. No? So from Special Defense Economic Zone to Advanced Security Technologies Park, and from Special Defense Economic Zone Authority to Advanced Security Technologies Park Authority. Then in Section 14, in line, page 20, line, so delete or replace the first sentence, yung no taxes, local and national, until the end, no, in documentary stamps, and then replace it with the provision of existing laws, rules, and regulations to the contrary notwithstanding, no taxes, local and national, shall be imposed on business establishments operating within the ASTP, including but not limited to all taxes covered in Titles 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Republic Act Number 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code, and all amendments and successors thereto, and all taxes covered under Titles 1 and 2 of Book 2 of Republic Act Number 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code, and all amendments and successors thereto. The reason for this, Mr. Chair, kasi usually sa mga ganitong charter, ang nakalagay exemption from all national and local taxes. But nagkakaroon po ng debate, especially with BAR, with DOF, kung alin talaga yung covered by the specific charter. So in this case, nilagay na namin lahat ng nasa libro. Buti na lang walang BIR para maging clear. No? This is a clarificatory amendment kasi maraming nagiging interpretation. Tama, Ma'am Miriam? And then also in line 19, replace 1% to the Treasurer's Office of the Municipality of Limay to just make it replace with host city or municipality. So, hindi na ho yung buong word. And with regards, Mr. Chair, to the proposed amendment earlier na gawing 0.5% ang province, 0.5% yung host municipality, we have no objection. We just included the general sharing, no, yung may 1% ang province and municipality. Kasi, number one, mawawalan talaga rin ho ng local income yung province and municipality kasi nga exempted siya sa taxes. Number two, I'd like to highlight yung need to get the support of both the municipality and the province for an economic zone to really develop. So, mahalaga po yung partnership. And then in the same section, section 14, to add a paragraph, this is to hopefully resolve yung problema natin kanina between security and economic. So, if I may read the new paragraph, ASTP enterprises deemed as priority investments as may be determined by the ASTPA, with the exemption included in the negative list drawn up as provided in Section 5I of this Act, may generate up to 100% of its income from sources within the customs territory, but without loss of eligibility to avail of the incentives in this Act, subject to Section 5F of this Act. So with that, Mr. Chair, with the decision of the board, they can allow 100% selling to AFP, to the local market, and then still availing of the incentives. And then lastly, section 16, just to add a paragraph, again clarificatory. Add a paragraph, there shall be no limit to the enjoyment of income tax holiday or ITH and net operating loss carryover NOLCO except for the sequential availment under section 17 of this Act and the 20-year period as provided in this section. So that's all, Mr. Chair.
Kita ko na umiiling yung taga-DOF. Actually, hindi pa kita nakikita, na-imagine ko pa lang. Alright. Any last words from our panel of resource persons? Wala naman po. I just have a few reminders for the body. Please submit to us your official position papers. No later than June 12, which is a week from now, so that we can consider your suggestions or your opinion on the matter. And then, ito po for the DND family. Like I said earlier, to help us, to enlighten us, no, on the vision of this proposed measure, please submit to us a roadmap or a business plan or a strategic plan for the proposed SPEDESA. Mas maganda ho kung meron tayong strategic plan ngayon so that the senators, no, and the committee will also understand what is the vision for this proposed measure. Mas mahirap po kasi kung i-approve tsaka tayo gagawa ng business plan, no? Mabuti kung ma-approve po. Mas maganda ho may business plan tayo so that the other members of the Senate will have full appreciation on where this PDESA will be headed. So we will require a roadmap or a business plan or a strategic plan. And then a cost and benefit analysis po. And we will need, this is also very important because we are now giving away economic benefits. No? So ano naman yung in return for those economic benefits? Of course, there are non-tangibles there as mentioned by General Junicio, which is the security aspect. These are non-tangibles, but malagay na rin natin yung mga non-tangibles doon para magkaroon tayo ng full appreciation. And we would like to also get the official position of Secretary Lorenzana on whether which modality the DND wants to embark. No? This is a question of whether to continue with PEZA or to continue with the legislative track. No? Both are in the advanced stages already. But we don't want a scenario wherein the PEZA modality and the legislative modality will have some complications in the future. And lastly, ito po, words of advice lang. Sana magkaroon po ng dialogue si Secretary Lorenzana at si Secretary Dominguez. No? I think a healthy dialogue is is beneficial to move forward with this bill. If you've heard, siyempre the economic cluster is really thinking about more on the pesos and cents, no? And that's their job because that's their responsibility. No? They have a lot of responsibilities to build a lot of things for our nation. But on the other side is really what I think General Junicio really explained it crystal clear that we have to go beyond pesos and cents and look at the welfare of our soldiers. Those are the things that the two heads can sit together and discuss, no? And find some form of middle ground. Kami naman, we're willing to work with whatever the consensus may be, but the guidance should come from the executive side because at the end, kayo po yung mag-implement nitong batas. Kami ho ni Joet, we will craft the bill, we will push forward, but at the end, the implementation will lie on the hands of the executive side. No? So, mas maganda ho mapag-usapan ng mabuti yan. Alright, and any last words? With that, since we have a lot of more things to discuss, we will suspend the hearing for today. And again, no, I'd like to reiterate, June 12 po yung deadline ng position papers. All right, so once again, thank you very much for your participation. Good morning to all. Meeting is suspended.